What is this, all extra stuff? Oh, this is for me for tomorrow.
This is just a typo, so that's a new one. There's a small typo.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And that's a revised budget package. Which Paul will bring up tonight.
Hierarchy, math, English, discussion.
And this didn't have other matters, the old one or something. So
I
that's why
didn't
she
email
gave
you
me
because
one.
we had talked.
Okay.
I thought we were all set with 10. I emailed everybody else.
How do you like this? I like this better.
Yeah, but you don't get it flat.
Looks better.
Well, with this, we can do better with the
Yeah.
Beverly's already picked up the table. Now she comes to show you.
What?
I thought you were showing me the table.
No, would you hand that, I want you to take this home so you and your mother can see what you're in for
Okay.
tomorrow. Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Actually, it's going to be a good time. I'd like to call tonight's meeting to order. I have enough pens here, don't I? This is for me. Tonight, we're going to have visitors first. Then we're going to have Hire a Teen campaign, Ms. Ellen Pillsbury. Math program review, Part 2, Dr. Norton. English Language Arts program review, 7 through 12, Ms. Diane Casilli and Dr. Ingrid Alardi. Then we're going to have discussion of school committee drug and alcohol use policy, followed by discussion of student discipline policy, then followed by a budget statement update, Mr. Jackson, substitute teacher salary adjustment, Mr. Jackson, other matters, and there will not be an executive session tonight. Okay. Oh, well. Anybody want to be heard under visitors? All right, moving right along. Ms. Pillsbury.
Hi, good evening. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Ellen Pillsbury, and I do the school to work for Foxborough High School. I just wanted to touch base on 5 quick points. This past Thursday, the School to Work Partnership, in conjunction with the Chambers of Commerce in Attleboro, North Attleboro, and the Tri-Town, and the New England Patriots, ran a Hire Teen campaign for the summer. And it's geared towards students at the high school who are 16 and older. We set up a training program and I gave you each a yellow folder that says Hire Teen on it, and in it there's a CD that the partnership worked up that has how to write a resume, how to write a thank you letter, tips for interviewing. So the kids, in order to participate in our Hire Teen campaign, had to go through a 3-hour training. Here in Foxborough, we have another one in Attleboro and another one in Norton. So a lot of the kids could not come on our training day, but they're allowed to go to other schools and be trained in theirs. And then what they can do is they are eligible for any of the jobs that we get from the job-a-thon going forward. So we did our first training in Foxborough. We had our phone-a-thon on Thursday, and Chief O'Leary and Deputy Chief Bagley came to make phone calls. Bev was there. She's got her shirt on tonight. And we came up with, out of a 3-hour phone-a-thon, we came up with 46 jobs. Our goal was 50, and we raised $750, which isn't a lot of money, but it will pay for a kid in a volunteer situation for us. So it really was, for our first time running a summer workshop, it worked out really, really well, and we were really very excited. So we started placing kids today in summer jobs. Their pay is anywhere from $7.50 to $10 an hour. So that was very exciting for us, and Sheila Peterson from Invencis came and made phone calls as well. This coming Thursday at Foxborough Invencis, you are all invited to a presentation that 3 of the Foxborough High School students, Tom Drew, Ben Harris, and Cy Kaza, they're all juniors, have participated in a program called WIT. It's Women in Technology, but I must backtrack and say it is no longer Women in Technology because we have gentlemen involved, but we still call it WIT. And the students worked on a database, worldwide database, that will be used for the Foxborough company and their engineers and their call stations, and it's up and running, it's functioning, and the students will be making their presentation along with students from Greater New Bedford and Tri-County. They're a team, on Thursday from 12 to 1 Lunch is being served. If any of you can come, we would love to have you come, hear what the students are doing. And then next Thursday, our group and students from, there are 17 other teams, 2 are from Attleboro, are going to be doing their presentations to people throughout the state down at Bristol Community College. So Jan will be going to that one. And we invited the department heads in math and science and Jeff Theodos to Inventus on Thursday morning, just so that they can get an idea of what we're doing. This past Wednesday, it was a busy week last week, I gave each of you a folder. It was Construction Career Day up in Hopkinton. I took 17 kids from the high school. It was a hands-on day of learning to use a bulldozer and a digger and pavers and cement mixers and that kind of thing. Kids had a great day. It's for kids that are going into construction, management, and/or are not going on to college. So it was a good hands-on day for them to meet people, talk with them in the industry, and then if any of them are interested in pursuing a degree or a career in construction, we can then hook them up from the contacts that we have in town or through the unions that we have met up at the Construction Career Day. CNA, our Certified Nursing Assistant Program, the students next week are starting their clinical rotation, 3-week clinical rotation. They've been through 4 months of classroom education. So the kids will start a 4-day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. For the next 3 weeks, they're going to be doing their clinical rotation at Life Care. After they graduate, they will be taking their state test probably the first or second week in June to become certified nursing assistants, making anywhere from $12 to $18 an hour. When we get the date for the dinner, the graduation dinner, we will invite you all, and I will let you all know. To date, we have no funding. This program for the last 3 years has been funded through Putnam Investments on a grant that the partnership wrote. We are at the end of our grant. At this point, we have nobody to fund the program next year. We have put, through our part, through Foxborough High School, 23 kids through. They are all, one of them graduates from UMass Amherst in May. She called me, she went for an interview at Sturdy, and she will be working at Sturdy, which was real exciting for us because they all come back and touch base with us and let us know how they're doing. So we are hoping that we will be running this program next year. We are not guaranteed. Unless we find funding, we are done.
What's the funding cost?
It's about $1,000 a student, and we put 2 programs on a year, 10 in the fall. We have 10 students in the fall and 10 in the spring. So this season, this spring, I had 4 kids in the program in Foxborough because somebody didn't show when I grabbed the seat for Foxborough, which means in the fall, if we run the program, I only get 2 seats. Usually it's 5 kids a year that we run. I've had more, or I've had some more because I kind of grab the seat up. If somebody drops out, I kind of put my kids in. And my kids, I have a long list. I usually have about 14 kids on a wait list. And we don't have funding yet.
I'm just a little confused. You said 20 kids, $1,000 a piece is $20,000. That represents all of those that go, including non-Foxborough students?
Yes, we have Attleboro, North Attleboro, Foxborough, and Norton.
And how much is Foxborough's portion, generally speaking?
Anywhere from 3,000 to 4,000, depending on how many kids we have in the program. So if we have 3 in the fall, it's like 3,000. If we have 2 in the spring, that's 2,000. So it's 5,000 total for the year. And our grant from Putnam was $65,000.
For how many years,
3 years.
3 years.
And we did it 2 years prior to that as well. And we were funded through a different source, but Putnam only lets you write the grant for one span, which is a 3-year span. So we have asked, Christine and I met with them a few weeks ago and asked if we could write another grant through them and change it slightly to qualify us. They weren't real thrilled with that idea. So we're looking. We really are actively looking.
Any chance of any hospitals sponsoring this kind of fund? I mean,
Well,
we would feed them
those?
Sturdy sits on our board. Sturdy Hospital sits on our partnership board. And they support us in other ways, and they can't give money to a nonprofit because they're a nonprofit. So we can't tap into them, but we've tried Johnson & Johnson, and we've tried the Balfour Foundation, and so Chris is looking, and we've actively been looking for about 4 months, but we don't have anything. And we discuss it at partnership meetings. We just don't have a source yet to pay.
Ellen, is there any way for us to, if we had to pay for the students that were going from here, would the program still be running, or the program won't run at all?
Well, if we want to pay, or the parents want to pay something for the kids to go, we could
I mean,
still.
certainly, the return is phenomenal. I can honestly
Absolutely.
attest to that. So, I mean, if we get into a position, if that program is going to run anyways, and say we had 5 kids who wanted to go, if we could find a way of funding our students and allowing them to go, I think it's something that we should consider.
It's a great program.
Because I wouldn't, I know how important it is personally, and I would hate to see anybody who could go through this and get certified not have that opportunity. So I think if the program is going to run anyways, and if you have X amount of students that want to go to it, I think it would behoove you to come back to the committee and say, look, I've got 5 kids, is there any way we can fund this?
Okay,
I think it's
and,
definitely worthwhile. I don't know, I can't speak for the rest of the committee, but I certainly would listen to something like that.
okay, and by the way the grant is written, the state only lets us put in at the most 11 students per
From
seat.
each town, or?
No, total partnership.
okay.
So we can run 11 at the most in the spring and 11 in the fall and the spring, and that's it. But
Right.
we're really, I'll keep you posted if we don't find funding. I mean, we're really hoping that
No.
we
I would
have-
hate to see it go by the wayside, and if we've got students that want to go to it, I mean, if other towns can't pay into it and there's more seats and we have more kids that want to go, I think it's something we need to take a look at, Ellen. So
Right.
don't keep us in the loop and let us know.
Okay, and, I mean, a lot of our kids that go on to nursing schools use
It's a
this
good
as a stepping
foundation.
stone. It's a
Absolutely.
marvelous foundation, and it does get a lot of kids that want to go into the nursing program through the door. I mean, it looks great on a college app, and then we employ them afterwards. We get them hired. So it's a multi-step process, and it's a great base for them. It really is.
Ellen, ironically enough, to spend $1,000 to put a student through a program like that, for them to find out whether or not they want to do this, is a little bit cheaper than parents having to put out $30,000 for a year and find out it's not what they want to do.
Right.
So I think as a screening tool, it's really to everybody's advantage.
Right, and
Yes.
we've got 2 seniors, Nicole Triani and Caitlin Warner are our 2 seniors in the program this
This year.
spring. And then this spring, we also have Jenny McDonald and Maggie Dustin are our 2 juniors. And they are all looking for employment after, so I'm starting that part with them next week. I'm going to go interview with them and see where they want to work and that type of thing. So they will be employed for the summer. How much they want to work is up to them, but they will be employed. So I'll keep you posted on that.
Definitely.
We are also, and then I'll leave you on this note, we also started a new program. The state heard how successful our CNA program was, and they came to us, the partnership, and asked us to run what's called a direct professional credentialing program, and it's for aides to work in group homes with mentally challenged adults. So we kind of put the program together really quickly. 3 Foxborough girls, 3 Norton girls. It was held here twice a week. It's a computer online course. It's run by Horace Mann. They had a grant that they needed to use. They came to us, said, we've heard what great things you do. So the girls did a 5-week online computer course working with learning disabled adults. They have now been put into group homes. They are in their internship program aspect. Once they finish this internship, they will each get paid by the partnership $250, and they will be credited and certified to work in a group home. And then, here's the kicker, if they decide that they would like to go to school at a state college here in Massachusetts, in social services, and the classes are not full, they go for free.
There's some great opportunities.
Great opportunity, and it is a new program for us. We are looking to run the program again next year. We're just starting to write grants for next year as well to see how much funding we are going to get as a partnership and who we can partner with. So that is something we're looking forward to going forward with for next year, along with CNA. So, and the girls that are in that are Lisa Severse, Kylie Quadrosi, and Brittany Capice. So they're all three seniors. They were thrilled with the opportunity. They're doing really well. They've been in their group homes for 2 weeks already, and things are going really, really well for them. So they were thankful for the opportunity, and they've done real well. So I will keep you all posted in where we stand and going forward.
Great.
Awesome. Thank you for highlighting how innovative it sounds like, you are in bringing these opportunities
We
for
tried.
the
We
students here
really,
in town. I
you
think
know,
it's wonderful.
I mean, not only do we do jobs and internships in the WIT program, I mean, we do a lot of things behind the scenes, and we're doing the community service for the kids. So we really do, it's a full-time job, and I'm glad I'm here because I am now here full-time, Monday to Friday. They've hired somebody for Norton 2 days a week, so it's nice I'm here. I can put all my energies here, and the kids definitely benefit, so I will keep you posted. Thank you.
Dr. Norton?
Okey-doke. Had to get my T-shirt. Thanks.
I just wanted to continue. I call this Math Review Part 2, and I just wanted to continue with the information that our Director of Mathematics and Science gave to you at the last meeting regarding the outcome of the year-long math review. Just to reiterate, the people that were on this review committee were, of course, Ms. Platt, Ingrid Alardi, Karen Saltzman, Doreen Bentley, Katie Young, Michelle McCarthy, Courtney Clements, Lynn Germain, Mary Garino, Kay Naylor, Sarah Cotter, Kate Pistone, Susan Abrams, Lindsay Bruno, Mary Janot, Alan Sharman, Cynthia Schneider, Cindy Brunelli, and Nina Mori. And I repeat their names because they put in an incredible amount of time and effort on this review. I thought perhaps I could go over with you a little bit about what they did. I know that Ms. Platt has come to the school committee meetings on several occasions to kind of walk us through it, but so that everyone understands that this decision was not come by lightly. First of all, a little of the history that perhaps you do not know is currently we are using Silver Burdette. That's the name of the textbook we have. And as Ms. Platt pointed out at the last meeting, it's called a basal. That would be a textbook and not a program. So it's just a textbook that the teachers are working from. Silver Burdette was last published between 1993 and 1998. That doesn't mean that we haven't been teaching math. What it does mean is that since that time, we have been doing what I always refer to at these meetings as Foxboroughizing it, adding to it, supplementing, taking a look at all of the data and saying, what are the things that we need to do in Foxborough to meet the needs of our students? So we have been building on the textbook that we had at that, actually to today. But if you think about it as a computer, it's as if I were saying to you, you have an Apple IIc computer, and it works. But you've added in a new keyboard, and you've added in a CD burner, and you plugged in this, and you plugged in that, and you put on some software, and you finally have gotten to the point that it's become so cumbersome it cannot be used anymore. Everybody else has moved forward with the newest versions of software, and we haven't because we can't plug that into the program that we have. The committee wisely saw this. They took a look at the data. As we've been talking about all year long, our math data is showing that we have plateaued. We are just about the same for the last 3 years. And in order to move off that spot, we're going to have to do something. So the committee took a look at that. They ran a survey with the entire staff, asked them what are the things that they are using. The staff complied, And after reading all of the data and going through what I just described with the silver burdette, came to the decision that we need a new program. Then they set criteria. What are all the things that we need? And each grade level, you listen to the long list of people that were involved, each grade level spoke up to, here are what the state standards are, here are the things that we've had to supplement, or here are the things that we need, and they created an extensive list. From that, they took a look at the most current programs. There are 5 current programs, and they had vendors come out and take a look at and talk to them, bring them materials. For a long time, if you walked into Miss Platt's office, you couldn't find Miss Platt because some Platt placed behind all these boxes and all these books for all these grade levels, sat Miss Platt handing them out so that people could take a look at it. Members of the committee then piloted some of the lessons in their classrooms. We made phone calls to area districts and said, what are you using? What do you like about it? What are any additions that you want, what are any changes that you've had to make to your program? And then the committee, after a great deal of discussion, worked their way down to 2 final programs. And those are the ones we were discussing at the last meeting. One is Everyday Math. Several districts have it. And it is the latest cutting edge piece that uses brain theory, that uses what we know about multiple intelligences, that uses what we know about all the learning styles, and it is the latest thing until now. Think Math was the other program that we looked at from Harcourt. It builds on what Everyday Math is. It has all of those aspects and then has built on it. The things that we were listening to the districts telling us they had problems with in Everyday Math are now being addressed in Think Math. What we did was we had the vendors come back, those 2 vendors come back out. We had our teachers go and visit classrooms for both Everyday Math as well as Think Math. We had another presentation from the vendors. All teachers were invited to this. Then after a great deal of discussion, the committee overwhelmingly elected Think Math. Some of the things that they specifically looked at, besides saying, all right, now we know that this is in alignment with our state frameworks. We know that this is the latest cutting edge for our students. In comparing the 2 things, the 2 different programs, there were several different things that stood out. One item that everyone needs to be aware of is that the cost of the program is comparable. The bid that came from Everyday Math was for K through 6. The Harcourt program, Think Math, only goes to K-5, so there is that discrepancy. The other large discrepancies were, and I think these are very, very important. One was professional development. Everyday Math does not have their own professional development teachers. They will come out, and they understand they do a fine job of it. When the program is originally purchased, they will send some people out. That is part of your purchasing price. However, they are not there long term. Harcourt has guaranteed 10 years of professional development whenever we want it on whatever subject that we want it in. If you put dollars and cents to that, you can anticipate $6,000 to $8,000 a year. The other big item, and I failed to mention this, we had a meeting in January when we had some parents that met with us at the Ahern, and we asked them what are the things that they were looking for. And they were asking for a leveled program. They were looking for not only a program for the regular student, they were looking for a program for the special needs student or the students that need a little extra help, as well as they were looking for a program that could inspire and challenge the upper level kiddos. Harcourt does this. Think Math addresses that in particular, especially with the special ed piece or the additional pieces. The low-level pieces, not necessarily special ed, excuse me, but the students who are struggling, that was critical to us because, as you may recall, our middle school right now did not meet AYP for exactly that population of students. Those parents also asked us for online pieces. That is fairly typical of the new programs. In particular, taking a look at Think Math and Everyday Math. Everyday Math does have an online piece. It's not only the textbook as well as some instructional materials, things for students to be tested on, as well as setting up a program for how they can remediate their pieces. That is available through Everyday Math. It is also available through Think Math. The discrepancy is that Everyday Math would charge, what was it? I'm going to give you the right numbers here. $8,750 per year for the online assessment piece, and they would charge $8,400 for the interactive student textbook per year. Excuse me, that is the cost, each of those per year. If you put the three together, the Everyday Math professional development, the online assessment, which by the way the teachers love because the students can take a test and then it says, all right, here's where the student's weakness is and here's some things that they could be doing. That also grades the test for them. And then also the interactive student book, so that the parents and students have access to it at another $8,400. If you put all that together, it comes out to be about $25,000 per year. Everyday Math has it in that for the first year. After that, we would be paying for it. Harcourt gave that to us as part of the purchase price for the life of the program, and that's for 10 years. So if you're just sitting here doing dollars and cents, and which one makes the most sense dollars and cents wise, the one that makes most sense is Think Math. But I think it's very, very important for everyone to understand that Think Math does a lot of the same things that Everyday Math does. It meets all those learning styles. It has the remedial pieces in it, the levels. We've been talking about it for the trophies program. It has things to challenge students at all different levels. It is definitely in alignment with the state frameworks. It is the cutting edge piece. Our teachers have tried it. The fun is Ms. Platt released the textbooks to the teachers, and they've been trying it out. So there might be some parents who are watching tonight, and they're saying, "Oh, my child did that in class." The students are enjoying it because it's playing with math instead of it being memorization. It also works very well with the program that we put together that requires benchmarks. That is where our teachers throughout the year testing the students to see, are they where they need to be? Are there other things that we need to be doing so that everybody is in the same place in the springtime? It's a new thing that Ms. Platt has brought with her. It's been a fabulous benefit to us. I've been asked, what are we going to do about the math specialists? Why do we need math specialists if we're going to be doing this program? And the thing is you're going to bring in math specialists. Do you want to teach them the old program and then a new program, or let's get them in on the cutting edge piece? Those math specialists are going to be in the classrooms helping the teachers with the new program, working with students, brainstorming ideas with those students and those teachers, and then also pulling out small groups of students to further challenge them. I was also asked, why don't we just pilot? Well, there's several reasons that I would suggest that you would not pilot. One is that when you pilot, you don't pilot for everyone. And that means that some of the students are still going to be limping along with a textbook that is from 93, 98, and pieces that are band-aided in. Others are going to have what we already see is the latest piece of information. Who's going to get what, I always find to be a difficulty. You're going to, if you take a look at our scores, you'll see that we're plateaued. As we've been talking about in the math or the ELA program, you can expect about 3 years before you're going to see any real change. Although I'm very hopeful about the math scores that they earned this year. They've been working very hard. But that being aside, just the impact of a program, just the program alone, you would not see a change for about 3 years. We're going to be adding professional development, some other things. However, if you want to put it off any longer than that, I would suggest to you that you not put it off any further. Let's get the students what it is that they need. Let's get this to the teachers. As I told the teachers, I'm expecting you to get the scores up. You can't do with what you've got. We need to have some new programs. I was also asked why not just go with Everyday Math instead of Think Math. Think Math has not been proven. It doesn't have a lot of data on it. Again, it's built on a lot of the premise that Everyday Math is built on. It wasn't available when those districts were out there. A good example is Brookline, however, who has Everyday Math and is going from Everyday Math to Think Math. So as they're going through their cycles, you're starting to see more and more people. I think there's been 3 or 4 since our last meeting, 3 or 4 more districts who have adopted Think Math. So it is becoming more and more of a popular program. If I think I've addressed all the questions that I had on my list of things to cover. Do you have any further questions?
I'd like to weigh in on this
Please.
as an educator. Many of the workshops that we are asked to do, I have done several on multiple intelligences. I have done several on different learning styles. And to come across a program that will address tactile, verbal, visual learning styles is a gift to a teacher. The thought and the research that goes into that to be able to produce it is in an incredible amount of human hours of work. And not only the different learning styles, but to be able to have supplementary materials that target special needs students, that target students who need repetitiveness, to challenge brighter students, is absolutely incredible. Until we can meet all of those, all that criteria for all the different learning styles, all our different levels of students, we cannot give the high school a well-rounded, prepared, solid basis in which to raise their scores also. I figured out, too, I mean, academically, I don't think we cannot accept this program. Financially, we definitely cannot. I question we cannot. We do not have another $250,000 to pay in retraining. If this hardcore could come out every time we have things waves. We do get new teachers. If we can have them trained on an equal basis as all the other teachers in the system, it's a smoother running program. I was ready to vote this in the first time I heard about it, but we had to have asked all the questions. As I have been subbing, doing my long-term subbing in other systems in the area, there is one thing that every year I went back, and it was in a different system. Parents are clamoring for online. Absolutely clamoring for online assistance and things that can help. And the interactive things that you can give for parents and children. So just the online itself. It's tremendous.
Thank you.
I'd be happy to weigh in. Again, Dr. Norton and the team, you did a wonderful job. You worked long and hard, and thank you for hanging in there while we asked you a whole series of questions again and again. And I think you have more than answered them. I am absolutely convinced that this is the best program. In my mind, no need to wait. I believe it's the best program out there, and I personally like the price. Considering that we need something of this magnitude and system-wide, I would not want to see us delay. I would want to see us move forward. You did just what we needed you to do. You reviewed the curriculum, and it's full and thorough, and I really don't have any other questions because you've answered them all.
Katie, we'll just
I-
keep
I was
coming,
just
we'll just
gonna
keep
say,
coming.
Let's work our way around the
Yes,
table.
I want to thank you for answering all of the questions, because I think the more information we have, the more information the public has, the more that people are going to understand why we are making these decisions. And, I want to echo, I don't want to be repetitive, what my two colleagues have said here already. I think also the point about piloting, personally, I think everybody would agree, we don't want to waste any more time. And I think that
That would leave too many students behind.
Exactly, and the lack of consistency, that we are working so hard to ensure that every student at whichever elementary school they're in, or, that is receiving the same kind of education is very paramount in my mind. So I think we need to do it, absolutely, so.
Well, Jan, as you know, I sent you quite a list of questions, and I appreciate the time you took answering all those questions. You've answered them all for me. But you've raised 2 additional questions.
Oh,
All right?
hot diggity. Okay,
So-
I'm ready.
One of the questions dealt with the older program, and
Yeah.
you've now indicated to us that book went out of circulation, went out of printing, when we last hired a superintendent 9 years ago. I'd like to know how many other books we're using in Foxborough today across this. I know you don't have the answer tonight,
All right,
but
okay.
how many other courses are using books that are outdated, that are no longer in print, 2 years, 5 years, 7 years, whatever it might be? Because I think it's important. You have been a key driver in the whole curriculum update, and I think this committee unanimously has been supportive of that. We have looked and found the money for doing that. But now that you've told me how old this book is and when it was last published, I'd like to see this across, just that information across the entire
We can get that right.
system. The other question that I have deals with money. We obviously have the surplus money to buy this program this year. And as I asked at the last meeting when the sales rep was sitting out there in the audience, I don't think she's out there tonight.
No, she's not.
But I said to her, I made the comment that, was that the very best price that they could come up with? When you looked at the data, how few communities have purchased it so far, and I believe Brookline got it for nothing, they're still in the early stages of marketing the program. And I would just be remiss if we didn't try to put a little bit more pressure on them to sharpen the pencil one final time.
And Mr. Harrington, normally I would absolutely say, we'll give it one more shot, but I'm going to tell you that I am bringing to you a highly negotiated cost for this program. That's why you have the free online and you have the free professional development, well, what I refer to as free, for the next 10 years. Brookline got it, they don't have it for free. What they were doing was piloting for free, and then what they will do is have to purchase it, if and when they choose to do that. They are piloting, I believe, I was told, in 40 classrooms this coming year. So that would be, so they get to practice with it, but that doesn't mean that they own the materials at that time.
Would you be willing to at least entertain with them a most favored nation status, i.e. that no other community will get it for less than we're paying? Or that our price will be reduced if they give it to someone else at a lower price?
I will ask that. I can tell you, I guarantee you that we are well below, if you looked at the PO. We are well below the cost that anybody would pay for it if they were paying for it from the catalog.
Then they shouldn't have a problem agreeing to that clause,
Yeah.
if that's the case.
We
Nobody
also
gets
have-
it lower than we do.
Nobody gets it lower than we do.
I
Or
will-
we get a rebate.
They don't generally work that way, but I will certainly talk to them. I understand where you're coming from. Textbook companies don't generally work that way, but I will definitely ask the
If
question.
you don't ask,
I
you'll
will
never know.
definitely ask the question.
But I support the program and the request.
Excellent, thank you.
You're being the last person, everybody has already said everything that you'd like to say, but I just want to point two things out. I think what's very important about this committee and the way we stand, we have an educator on the committee who brings one dimension. As parents, as people who are out in the community, we bring another. We have a business expertise here, and I think we have a very well-rounded group of individuals to represent this town. I think that's what's sometimes entertaining and sometimes very informative, and I appreciate the fact that we all sit and do our homework and really look into these things. I support this program. I don't have a problem with this at all.
Thank you
And
very much.
I said it over and over and over, that we have the neighborhood school system, and unless they're all on the same level playing field, we can't bring them together in the middle. So I think this is what will do this for us, and it's very important. So I think what we need probably at this point is a motion to accept this and get Jan off with a purchase order as quickly as possible.
Yes,
I'd make
we
that
will.
motion.
We're going to get this
I'll
book in here.
second.
With whatever else Larry's asked her to.
That doesn't have to be part of the motion. I think we can just trust her to do that without making it part of the motion. I don't want her to not be able to do a purchase order because of the motion. But in addition to the cost of the program, there was also some ancillaries you wanted us to approve?
Yes, well, we're looking at those at this point. Ms. Platt came up with something less than $10,000 worth of additional calculators, what are the Cuisinart rods. They're little plastic rods to the kids. That's that tactile visual piece. Additional those scales, those kinds of things. So she had added on. Well, let's see, I wasn't going to give the number. Okay, she added on another $9,379.20. And the reason why I'm waxing on that is at the same time she handed me a PO the other day and said, so here's a book that I'd really like for our teachers to have to develop additional lessons for the upper level students. And it was for one grade level. I think it cost $128. But at any rate, what we're doing is she's looking at a good price because we want to buy it for every grade level, not just grade 6. So I'd like to add that onto it. So what I'd like to do is ask you to accept. I'd like for you to. Paul and I have been working at this. I'd like you to accept it as $90,000. That gives us plenty of wiggle room to, add any additional materials that are necessary. I'm just not going to give you the exact number tonight because in looking at that PO, I think that's valuable enough that before we get out of this, we need to be adding on those materials. So I'd ask you to, the purchasing price for Think Math is $75,552.05 unless they tell me something different this week, tomorrow. But I'd like for you to approve $90,000 to go to the improvement of the math program overall.
Do you want to do that in 2 separate motions, Madam Chairman? Because we definitely want the program.
Yes.
And she's free.
Why don't we do that? You know what, we probably should do it in 2.
I think we should.
75,000 for it, and
So you
then
can do your
for the
PO in the
supplemental.
morning.
So it's $75,552.05 unless it is negotiated down tomorrow.
Okay. All right.
But what are the grades that you're referring to, the supplemental materials?
Actually, I would supplement all the way through 6, but to companion the program is K-5.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion that we give the superintendent the go-ahead to do the purchase order for the new math program for $75,552.
Okay.
And 5 cents.
Beverly made the motion.
And 5 cents.
Kate seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
5 in favor. All right, and then do the separate so that if we, depending on what the surplus is or how we have to come up with this money, it'd be
Well, Dr. North would need to negotiate now. Do we say we give her the okay not to exceed a certain amount?
Yes.
Is that- And then.
Yes.
So it would be
we
the
say that-
difference of the 75 and the,
Jan, do you need to purchase, you need to do the purchase order for the program, we know that.
Yes, I
Do
need
you
to
need
have
to
that
do
tomorrow.
by tomorrow the supplementals?
No, I don't.
Well, then
Well,
why don't we
wait
hold
on
off
that.
on the
Okay.
supplementals
Yeah,
until you,
and see what the
until you know what
surplus is.
I
really
can
it's
do
going
that.
to be?
yeah,
I can do
and
that.
figure out where we're going to move
I
around.
can do. I just want to make sure
Yeah.
you've
That we're aware
adopted.
that we need it.
You've adopted a curriculum cycle, and that means that even though every subject will be reviewed each year, this is the big year for K-5 math. So when you step away from it, all of you need to feel comfortable that the teachers have everything they
Right.
need. I think the other piece, though, is that we have, the school committee has taken to the town a budget that is hiring math specialists. And we want to make sure that those math specialists have the materials that they need also. So this extension materials that I've asked Ms. Platt to go back to the drawing board on are also additional materials for the math specialists as well as for the classroom teachers. So I think I would be remiss at this point to say, you know what, just to make life easy for you tonight, I'm going to tell you it's an additional $9,379.20, which is what Ms. Platt has already worked up because she's been working very diligently at this. After meeting with her at the end of last week, I've sent her back to the drawing board. I think it's only fair that, and only correct, that if you're going to do this, let's do it right and buy everything that you need. So I'll be more than happy to give those final numbers to you as soon as
I
I
don't think
have them.
anybody's opposed to it.
No, we just have to
You've
figure out
asked,
where
you
we're
say
gonna-
it's 9,900, but you're asking for 15, so a taxpayer could say, why don't you just approve the 10?
Yeah.
So if, I'd be okay approving up to 10, but if you want some time, and you don't need to have a decision tonight, you want some time to figure out the final cost, we might as well wait till the next meeting By then, it's the third Monday in May, you probably have your costs, and we can approve it then,
Let me
whatever you
extend,
want.
let me extend the list. But I understand, put this in the back of your head, that you're going to need additional
Correct.
materials.
Yes.
Right now, I'm going to tell you, you definitely need 10,000.
Correct.
After we go back and take a look at it and really look at the minute details and remind ourselves that if you're going to do it right, and get the supplementary materials that the specialists will need, expect about 15.
Right, well, Paul's already built into
Yeah.
the budget report, which you've all seen tonight, 90,000
That's
to cover
correct.
this. So it's not like the money's not there to work with it.
And Paul and I are working on that. We're also, we're taking a look at that as well as the next presentation, making sure that we have money to cover all these things. May I just say congratulations? It's the right thing to do. You've done the right thing for the children of Foxborough. Congratulations, Ms. Platt. Please extend it to your committee. You've worked hard. You deserve it. Job well done. Thank you very much.
Excellent.
And as a committee, thank you for being patient with us. Next, the English Language Arts Program,
7 through 12.
7 through 12.
I moved on this way.
Does my microphone have to move?
No. We're above that.
Still have to turn a little bit. The back's not working.
Don't get a stiff neck trying to turn.
Just turn.
Can you see that? Is that going to work okay?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
It is in the same slides that you have in your handout, if that's easier.
Good evening. I'm here to share with you the process and recommendations that came out of the English Language Arts Program Review for grades 7 through 12. The purpose of this review was to evaluate the vertical and horizontal alignment of the curriculum from grades 7 through 12, to look for strengths and weaknesses, and also to make sure that our curriculum is meeting the state frameworks for English Language Arts. The team consisted of administrators, high school English teachers, and middle school English staff. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all of those people who participated for their hard work and commitment. This was a year-long process that began in October. The team looked at analysis of MCAS, Terra Nova, and SAT data, as well as had conversations about students' classroom performance. And from the analysis and the conversations that took place, there were 4 areas of concern that were identified. And those areas were grammar and vocabulary, core literature scope and sequence, critical reading skills, and research skills.
I do think it's important to note that as part of our presentation, what we're going to talk about and focus on tonight is the areas that we identified that were weaknesses or relative weaknesses for Foxborough students. There are many different areas of our ELA program at the 7 to 12 level where our students are really excelling and doing a phenomenal job. So when you see the data that we're presenting today, we're not focusing right now on those strengths because we're really looking at how we can improve and continue to grow our program. But in areas, for example, locating information from texts, answering comprehension questions, we have our students performing in the upper 90th percentile for that. So I do want to note that there are a lot of areas of strength, but for our purposes tonight, we'll focus on the areas of weakness. Grammar and vocabulary is a relative area of weakness for Foxborough students, and that's a weakness that is reflected across many sources of data, including the Terra Novas, the SATs, and the MCAS, as well as the formal and informal assessments that take place on a day-to-day basis in the classrooms. I'm going to share with you some of the Terra Nova data so that you can see how we identified these particular target areas of focus. On the Terra Nova reports, you will see that there are some categories where it says scores are not reported. Those on the 2005 administration of the Terra Novas, our kids took that test from grades 2 all the way through grade 9. we get a breakdown of national percentile ranks on a number of different skills. For some reason, on the 2006 test reports, the vocabulary section was eliminated. I have spoken with Terra Nova. They don't know what happened, whether there was something that happened in the scoring. They are trying to see if they can retrieve or fix any of that data, but it's listed as not reported because we didn't get a breakout score for that vocabulary on the 2006 reports. We did do our own internal analysis. We did look at the tests. We did look at the scores. We looked at the items kids struggled with. And I also want to point out that the students take the Terra Novas in October. During the year from 2005 to 2006 was the year that the English Language Arts Program Review was taking place. So we implemented the new program this fall, and the Terra Novas were taken in October. So we weren't expecting significant, huge gains in the vocabulary scores across that year because there wasn't a real comprehensive instructional focus on that category during that time. There wasn't any new program implemented. We will be looking to start to see some gains.
Quick question for you there. Paul showed in the budget report that we were over budget in testing this year, and the Terra Nova had raised their price. Did we get a credit for the issue that they had?
They're working, and we'll have to look at that because we've talked about whether we want to give in future years all the supplemental tests. Terra Nova has a core test, and then they offer what are called the plus tests, diagnostic tests. We have to look at that whole agreement with Terra Nova, whether we want to continue to give all those. If they can't resolve an instant error on their part, we will be looking for some compensation of some sort of agreement in the future.
Okay, because we'd like to try to get the refund in this fiscal year, since this is when we are going to be over budget.
Yeah, I'm not sure what, as I said, they're working on whether they can, get that data for us, but we are looking into that issue.
Okay.
But if you look at the Terra Novas, again, the scores are reported as national percentile ranks. That's where Foxborough students score in comparison to students across the nation taking the test during that particular test time period. We expect our students to score significantly better than the national average. So our preliminary, when we first start to look at the data, we look at scores anywhere under the 75th percentile is our first area that we look at. Over time, as our kids' scores improve in different areas, we also start to look at scores in the low 80s. Okay, so those are sort of our criteria. You can see vocabulary scores and language mechanics scores across the board are under the threshold that we're looking for. So again, I've given grade 5 and 6. You can see language mechanics, which would be the grammar piece, in the 57th percentile and the 68th percentile for grade 5. Vocabulary scores slightly higher, but still hovering in the low 70s. That's true in at the 7th and 8th grade level as well. Grade 9 does not have a vocabulary test as part of theirs, but the sentence structure and editing scores I did report, and again, those are pretty significantly below where we'd like to see our students scoring. We also looked at the MCAS data, and I just want to clarify for the MCAS piece. The MCAS data, I would suggest when you're looking at these discrete skills, that you need to look at patterns over time as opposed to individual test administrations. On a typical MCAS test, you only have, in the English Language Arts category, 35 questions, and there's many different standards being evaluated. So on some tests, there's only 1 or 2 questions measuring a particular standard. If one question is worded difficult, in a difficult way, it can really skew the results. So you really want to look for patterns over time when you're looking at those discrete skills. Again, our students tend to perform slightly higher on the MCAS than they do on the Terra Novas. If you look at those patterns over time, you'll see there's areas that the scores are slightly higher, but they're still hovering in the in the average of the high 70s, low 80s. So there's still areas that we can continue to improve and work on. Again, the tests for grade 5, 6, and 8, they were not tested during the 2004 or the 2005 year in the MCAS. They were all tested in 2006. Again, there's some variation there. There was one year we had a 94 percentile in the structure of English. That was grade 6. When we went back and looked at that actual test, there was only one question. So again, you have to interpret that with caution. I did provide for you the MCAS CPI comparison, so you could see where our students fell in with the same 13 communities that we benchmarked earlier in the year. In the 2005 test year, we were on the higher end in terms of our CPI score. We were at 91.8%, or 91.8 CPI. There were about 5 communities, 6 communities above us there. In the 2006 administration, you can see that we actually did a little bit better. We moved forward a little bit, but again, you have to interpret that with caution, because when you're looking at those scores, from 91.8 we went to a 92.0, so it's 0.2 of a difference. So when the districts are hovering in that higher end, slight variations, make a significant difference
But
there.
also those are two different sets of people.
Yeah.
Not only that, but when you're looking at these numbers, I think sometimes if you see that a senior town is higher than us,
Yeah.
but they've tested 100 less children than us, then certainly you would expect their scores to be higher. So I think sometimes you have to take a look at the number of students, the
the size of the
population,
population.
because certainly the more they take it, unfortunately, sometimes the lower your scores are going to be. So I think we always need to take that into consideration, too.
Yeah, with the MCAS test, districts should be testing all their students, but you're right, the size of the group, if you're testing 100 students, an individual score carries more weight. So that's true. I also provided for you some average information on the SAT writing test, which is another source of data that we use to look at to evaluate our vocabulary and grammar skills. The average score for the 2006 administration of the SAT writing test was a 521. I will give you comparisons in a minute so you can look at how we compare with other local communities. 2004 and 2005 SAT years, they piloted the writing section, but those scores did not count during those years. 2006 was the first year that those writing test scores counted. So that's why you don't have a direct comparison there. Additionally, there was an SAT 2 writing test that was given, but only approximately 25 to 30 students took it. So I didn't report those scores. The average of those were in the 600s, but it wasn't a representative group taking the test at that time. The mean SAT writing scores comparison, we fall pretty comparable to where we did with the MCAS. Our average is 521. You can see the third column shows you the rank where we are in the Commonwealth at 73, with 4 towns surpassing us in the writing, quite a few towns not performing as strongly. Once we completed the data analysis and really identified the target areas of weakness and what we wanted to focus on for improvement, our committee took quite a bit of time to try to analyze what the root causes for the underperformance were. The first root cause that was identified for the grammar and vocabulary topic is that the core instructional text that we're using from grade level to grade level are written by and published by different companies. And so there's some variation in the scope and sequence of instruction for those texts. And when I'm talking about the scope, I'm talking about the breadth of information that's presented in any one textbook, the parameters around the content. The sequence is the order that things are presented in. So when you have one publisher and that's presented, we're using a text called The Right Source in grade 7. When you transition into grade 8, if another publisher has a different sequence, you can end up with redundancies, skills that are taught multiple times, and you can also end up with gaps in instruction. There's times where different publishers are appropriate, but in the grammar, we're seeing it feed into the problem that we're seeing here. So you just go on to the next one. What our recommendation at this point to address that root cause and what the issue is, right now we are using a text called Elements of Writing and at the 9th and 10th grade level. It's a premier text that many communities use. It's based on the Warner's Grammar Program, which is, again, one of the most popular programs at the high school level. The high school teachers have seen positive results with this text, and we already own it, as I said, individual student copies for all of grade 9 and grade 10. We have about 45 copies of that text for grade 8. A class set was purchased, so teachers use that now to supplement, but we don't have enough text for kids to take them home, for it to be a core part of the instructional program. What we'd like to recommend is that we extend the Elements of Writing program down to grades 7 and 8 so that we have one publisher. We have the concepts are defined in the same way across all 4 grade levels. Again, and I have a copy of it if anybody wants to, I'll just pass it. This book, the Elements of Writing that we have at the high school, has been reprinted as Elements of Language, so it has been revised. It is not, as you mentioned earlier, it's not a text that's currently in publication because they've transitioned and are reprinting it as Elements of Language. The main difference is that they've added some supplemental material for how to be media savvy, how to read informational text, and how to conduct some research. A lot of that at the high school level is taught through alternate tools. So we don't feel we need to update the high school materials at this point. All of the remaining concepts that are in here really are fairly identical from the text. It doesn't have this supplemental part. But in terms of format and how everything's presented, how the information is structured, the sequence, this would be much more closely in alignment with what we're feeding students into in the high school.
Ingrid, you
Yes.
said that a lot of the communities are using.
Elements of Writing is a very popularly used text.
I mean,
yes.
did you actually look at the surrounding communities to, the ones that you listed?
To see who's using elements of language? No, I don't have a list of what people are using.
The four,
I can get that for
the
you.
4 school systems that beat us on the writing, we would probably want to know
Yeah.
which ones
I can
were what
find
they're
out for you
using.
what they're
Just
using.
because that's how we are, right?
Yeah, right, well, that's what
I
I'm
can
thinking.
find out
You're
for you.
asking, to update this, and it sounds like you want the consistency, because this is at
That's
the
the
high
biggest
school.
issue
So
for
in
us
the-
is the consistency, which is why we haven't surveyed other communities. We were looking to try to build on the success that we have with the current program. So trying
Sure.
to get that vertical
Yes.
continuity rather than transition to an entirely new program where it's actually working at
But
several
it's,
levels.
like Kate
But we
said,
can
it still
certainly
would
get that data.
be useful information
The other
for us to
four.
have, just,
We gotta know.
for us to know.
Just
that
an FYI.
Yes, I will certainly get that for you.
We leave no one in the dust.
Okay. As I mentioned again, I already mentioned, grade 7 is using 2 older texts by Houghton Mifflin, and there are some inconsistencies in how information is presented from those. feeding into the
Following
elements.
up on Larry's question, do we know how old those texts are?
2000.
2000.
Yeah.
I understand we're talking about the difference between a textbook
Yeah.
and a program.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what Dr. Alardi is talking about is not a program, it's a textbook.
Right.
So it's a tools. At this level, there are no programs, there's just textbooks.
Right.
So it's what do the teachers do with that information? Grammar hasn't changed a whole lot. I used to teach it, it's still the same.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Still worrying.
And we're looking at this one, right?
Yep.
Yes.
This is 2007,
Yep.
hot off the press.
It is hot off the
And I
press, and
have-
again, it's this publication which
But
we
I've
currently
also
have.
been in your shoes, so
we
if you
printed.
recommend, I know why you recommend.
Oops, I'm sorry, I skipped ahead of myself. The other recommendation that we have is that we expand the vocabulary program in the vocabulary text we're currently using. We have a vocabulary text at grade 7. It's published by Sadler. It's an excellent vocabulary text. We're using it comprehensively across the board in grade 7. We do not have a textbook for vocabulary in grade 8. What currently happens is that the teachers are teaching vocabulary, but they're drawing from core literature. So if you're reading Midsummer Night's Dream, the vocabulary words are drawn from that text, and the exercises are generated by the teacher. We feel we need something more comprehensive at this point. And the Sadler, because we have it in grade 7, we've had it at grades 9 and 10 as well. It's a comprehensive program, really focuses on words with multiple meanings, different approaches to understanding vocabulary. We'd like to bring that into grade 8. We don't feel that drawing the words from the literature is sufficient to prepare our kids for 9th and 10th grade. At the 9th and 10th grade level, we've had the Sadler text. Again, there's an A, B, C, or D. So they're starting with one text in grade 7. If we add the grade 8, it would feed into the high school. High school, a couple of years ago, transitioned in their level 1 English courses to using an AMSCO. I have that, so if you want to take a look at the primary differences at the high school, instead of words organized by theme or by content or by meaning, the words in the AMSCO tests are organized by word origin. And that's a better fit with what they need for the SAT, but premature to introduce in 7th and 8th. So we'd like to keep what we have in 7th and 8th, focus on, the thematic organization, word meaning, and then when they hit high school, we'd like to, instead of just having level 1 use this text, we'd like to use it for all the kids to help them better understand how word origin impacts meaning. So I'll have that again.
Oh, you gotta go back to school.
I'll lend you a book.
Sorry, I think it's projected. Okay. The projected costs are in your packet, but the total cost for purchasing those additional texts is $28,134.16. The elements of language would be individual student text for every child, as well as the supplementary and support materials. I think over time there'll be some offsets to this cost because published with elements of language, they do have a practice book. We're currently buying every year a different grammar practice book for kids. So the consumables are going to be a wash over time because we'd stop purchasing the supplemental materials we have and transition to using the elements of language program. Professional development is included in the purchase price of that program. The others, again, about $1,690 for the Sadlier. There's teachers' editions, which also have additional support materials in them, and about $2,640 to complete the AMSCO sets. Again, we already have them for the level 1 students.
Now, is Harcourt going to give us this for 10 years too, professional development?
No, because this is whole.
Oh.
But the professional development, again, with this program.
It says a Harcourt Education Company.
Yeah,
But it's
they're an
Holt.
offshoot, but it's Holt, Reinhardt, and Winston.
Oh, okay.
But again, because this is just a textbook, the volume of professional development is not going to be what's required to support a full program implementation with all the different parts. The grammar is one small section of the curriculum for grades 7 and 8. So they will come out and do several days professional development to help people know how to use the textbook, what's in the textbook, the pacing, what the assessments are. There is an online component to this program as well. So there's practice, students would have access at home for practice and for reinforcement. So they will support that. Beyond the materials that we're requesting, the committee did spend a lot of time at looking at curricular issues that don't require a purchase to fix, but that are areas that we need to spend further time on developing. And I wanted to share some of the other curricular-based root causes that we will be working on. As I mentioned, we do have gaps in the current scope and sequence of the curriculum, part caused by the different publishers and the lack of continuity vertically of that program. And another issue is that the state frameworks for English language arts are written in grade bands, so that the standard is written for grades 6 to 8, and then there'll be a list of standards. So they're written in a band. When you look at that, it's a little ambiguous within that grade band. Where are kids expected to first be introduced? Where is the concept expected to be mastered? At what level do you expect 6th grade students to hit each standard? So what our committee did was we broke the state standards down much more specifically. And we took the general grade band standard and broke it into a grade-specific standard. And for each grade-specific standard, we also wrote a student learning benchmark. So exactly what should the 6th grade student be able to do to demonstrate mastery of the specific standard that they're working on. Over the summer, once we have determined what programs and resources we're adding, a curriculum committee will work to integrate those and to develop the benchmark assessments for those key skills.
How many skills are you talking about when you say that you did
I
this?
brought,
It
because I
sounds
thought
like
you might
enormous.
ask, but I brought the state frameworks if you want to take a look.
Yeah.
Within the grammar and vocabulary, I just brought you the vocabulary one. Within each grade, there's probably 6 to 8 standards that kids are expected to master. But again, they're written broadly for a band, an age band of students, so we took them down. But I'll pass that around if anybody wants to take a look at that.
So you're going to be working on how to implement those into the curriculum? Is that-
We've already written the grade-specific standard
Okay.
and the learning benchmark. So that the learning benchmark would be for the standard for grade 6. What will the student be able to do to demonstrate?
Okay.
And it might be to identify subordinate clause, whatever the
Okay.
specific thing, and they'll be able to show it how. We defined all that.
Okay.
So what the teachers will work on this summer is looking at the new materials that we purchased and how those will help us meet those objectives. So they'll be mapping that out. The third root cause is sort of embedded, that we need to take a look at the assessment of mastery. Now that we've defined our expectations by grade level, we need to know, and we need to develop tools to measure that so that we can identify students that require additional support or remediation or practice, and that we can identify those students early so that we can intervene earlier. So those are some things that require no purchases, but I wanted you to know the kind of work that we'll be doing this summer. As Dr. Norton said with math earlier, this is the year of the ELA review. So once we completed our work, we also looked at all the other reference tools and materials that we have in the classroom to see if there's any other recommendations we should be bringing forward at this time for material purchases. I did want to highlight in the English Language Arts Frameworks and Standards, there are several standards written that refer to students' ability to effectively use a dictionary or a thesaurus to improve their word choice in their writing, to edit and revise and strengthen an argument. So I've given you a copy of a couple of the different standards that speak to that skill. When we look at the reference materials we have in the classrooms, we don't feel that we have sufficient materials available to students that are readily accessible to fully or as effectively as possible meet those standards, those learning standards. So we are recommending some additional purchases to update and improve our reference library. At the 7th and 8th grade level, we'd like to recommend purchasing 60 American Heritage dictionaries. We'd like to go with the paperback version. At the 7th and 8th grade level, students do a lot of in-class writing. They need to have a tool readily accessible to do the editing. There are a couple of classrooms that now have individual copies of the dictionary on every student desk. So when kids are working, they have access to that tool. Not all of our classrooms have that, and we think they should. So we'd like to expand the tools that we have at 7th and 8th and buy individual paperback dictionaries so that every student will have a dictionary in their English class to use for the purpose of editing, revising, and for doing vocabulary and word work.
Ingrid, when my daughter was in 8th grade, she was required to purchase a specific dictionary.
We'd like to provide them for
Yeah.
all our students
Yeah.
at the school. We feel that if it's an instructional tool kids need every day.
No, I agree. I just, I think
Some
some teachers
classes
are
have done
probably
that. Some
requesting
classes
that.
have tried
you know,
piloting.
When they don't have it, they've been
Right.
asking parents to purchase it, that's
Yeah.
true. But not all. So
Yeah.
some of the students have had that dictionary work and some haven't.
Right.
We'd also like to recommend purchasing 48, again, paperback dictionaries. Thesauruses for students in the 7th and 8th grade class. We don't feel, because of the frequency of use for that particular tool, that they need an individual copy, but we'd like to have sets of 10 to 12 copies available in each classroom for students to access as they need them. At the high school level, a lot more of the writing is done at home as part of homework assignments or outside of the classroom. So we don't feel at the high school that they need individual copies of dictionaries. So we're going to recommend hardcover purchases for the high school, and we'd like to have at least 6 copies of an advanced collegiate dictionary. We're recommending the Webster at the high school for grades 9 to 12, as well as for 2 copies of a hardcover Webster New World Thesaurus. Again, so that we can effectively meet those standards, but recognizing that students do more of their writing at home at the high school level, but may be required to revise or peer edit or things like that where they might need access to a quality reference tool. Total purchase price of that would be $2,461. I'm hoping to be able to negotiate that downward. I did find a reference vendor that's offering significant discounts, so I'm hoping to be able to negotiate that down, but that's the current price I have to offer you.
All right, the second area of concern that resulted through this review, this actually came up through discussions with the teachers, that the core literature selections, actually let me step back. In Foxborough, in order for our students to meet the state requirements for comprehension and evaluation of literature, we need to provide them with the opportunities to read a variety of literature. And in Foxborough, at each grade level, there's different sources. We have a protected book list, as well as a protected book list, the anthologies, summer reading lists, and outside reading lists. And these are all the different places where their literature comes from. And over time, as these lists have been updated, they have not been cross-referenced, so that there are some titles that appear at more than one grade level at one of those selected lists. So that became a concern because when the level of interest in teaching can be compromised if a student's already read the novel when you're using it as your core literature in your classroom. So the team took the time to look at all of these different sources of literature and they looked for titles that were repetitive, and when they found a title that had been repeated, they assigned it to a specific grade level to get rid of those conflicts. And it was also recommended to fill in that we look at updating the list and adding some new core pieces from the list where pieces of literature have been eliminated. And it was recommended that for grades 7 and 8, that we add 5 new titles to their core literature lists. And we would like to add some more modern and nonfiction texts because our lists right now seem to be heavily weighted in the classics. And that would be at a cost of $4,778. And any questions? The next area of concern, the third area, was the critical reading skills. And critical reading skills is a higher level thinking skill. It's more challenging to teach, and students need to learn to use their prior knowledge and personal experiences to help them understand the text when they're reading. And this applies to all content areas. And we looked at analysis of Terra Nova, MCAS, and SAT data, and through looking at the analysis, we found that this is a weaker area of performance for our students. And we felt that the root cause from this was an inconsistent use of terminology and strategies in the classroom and teaching students how to address these questions when they come up. And I have for you here the Terra Nova data from grades 2 through 6. And this is showing our national percentile rank. And it's comparing us to other districts who have taken, across the nation, taking the same test at the same time. And as you can see, we, in Foxborough, 75% is the point where we'd like to see our students performing there or higher, and you can see that our scores are right around that area. So this is an area of concern for us, or that we feel our students could do better. And then again, as you can see in grades 7, 8, and 9, the performance is slightly stronger, but it's still in that between 70 and 80%, and we'd really like to see some improvement. And I pulled out the performance standards that show you analyzing text and evaluating and extending meaning, and those are the questions where they're required to be able to read critically. The next set of data that I have for you tonight is the MCAS. And you'll notice that what I've done, this is showing students answering correctly for each standard, and I've pulled out the standards that would have questions where students would need to use critical reading to be able to answer correctly. And you'll notice that for theme and poetry, it says not reported. Those were test years where either there were not any questions that were asked that address those specific standards, or it could have been in a field test. Each year, as part of the MCAS, there are tryout sections, and that we do not get the results for the field tests. I've also included open response. MCAS, the format is multiple choice and open response. The first 4 standards that are listed, you can see that students are performing stronger between that 70 and 90%. But then when they're asked to answer an open response question, which is a written response, where they're usually asked to analyze, evaluate, or interpret what they've read and use supporting evidence to support their answer, they have much more difficulty.
It's quite
The
significant.
questions from, I was just going to add, the questions on the fiction, nonfiction, theme, and poetry tend to be multiple choice items, and our students tend to perform significantly better on multiple choice than open response. The open response has that additional criteria where they have to not only answer the question, but they have to explain their reasoning and thinking, and that's an area of difficulty.
I was just
Significant.
Much worse than that, yeah.
I mean, there's such a significance, I mean, I know it's just particular, but the poetry, going from the previous year in 2005, third grade poetry was 90%, and then in 2006, it's 47.
And each year, the reading selections change as well. So some years, the poetry that they're asked to read is more difficult, higher level interpretation than the previous year. And you also,
And that's, again, why you have to be a little careful with the MCAS.
It's a different group of students.
right, different.
No,
Right,
it's
but
not.
It's
If you look
the
at
same
grade
group, because it's grade 3
205.
the previous
Oh, it
year,
is,
and then
okay.
it's the following year, the
Yeah.
same group. There's a significant drop in there.
Well, the level of difficulty.
And again, I think you have to, with the MCAS, that's why you need to look at patterns over time. On the poetry standard, you're talking about 1, maybe 2 questions.
Yeah.
So sometimes something in the wording of the question is really difficult, and if kids miss 1 question, then that drops dramatically. 'Cause
But look at the open response, 52,
It's
59, 53, consistently, very, very weak.
Yeah, I was really struck by that when I looked at the other comparisons of the other areas of weakness.
Yeah. And I would say that there have been a lot of different things that we've worked on over the past year to target that open response, how to organize an open response answer. You'll find that in the new literacy program we have, the K-6 program, there are a lot more open response format type questions that are part of the regular assessments that kids take. The kids have reading and writing journals, so when they get questions that they have to write about regularly. So it's embedded much more comprehensively and in a much more coordinated way in the new ELA program. Additionally, we've done a lot of professional development work on that. We've had both the directors come in and do model open response lessons for kids. We've also been having kids score their own open response items with the MCAS rubric and looking at scoring each other's work. So we've done a lot to address that. But again, we're raising it as an area of concern that we need to continue to address as part of the 7 to 12 ELA review.
And here, these are the MCAS results for grades 5 and 6. This was the first year that we took the English Language Arts MCAS exam. And once again, you can see the open response scores are low. We are performing better with the multiple choice. And then as you look at grades 7, 8, and 10, you can see the performance does improve slightly, but open response is still an area of concern. I've also included the SAT critical reading scores that shows where we fall in comparison to other local districts, and you can see that we're towards the bottom third of that group.
Yeah, Westwood, Sharon, and Franklin seem to always be in the top 3 in almost anything you measure, it seems.
Absolutely.
Sharon and Westwood definitely.
Yeah. And ironically enough, Sharon's testing more students than we have. Almost like 90. That's huge.
So after reviewing the data, the committee felt that we need to continue to address this area of concern, and we need to do that as part of rewriting the curriculum this summer, that when the curriculum is rewritten, that we need to make sure we include specific strategies and activities to teach critical reading to our students. We need to develop core questions that require inferential thinking. We need to make sure that we have instruction, structure, and elements of the various types of genres that students are asked to read, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, so they understand the text structure and how to use that to help them with their understanding. We need to make sure that we have consistent teacher modeling and explicit instruction and how to find and explain the supporting evidence that they need to use when they're answering those open response type questions. And we also need to include some benchmark assessments that are in the same format as the MCAS, that ask them to use their supporting evidence and require critical thinking, so that we can measure their progress as we go to see what we can do additionally for them. Additionally, critical reading skills will be addressed in all school improvement plans, and the Professional Development Committee is currently looking at offerings, year-long offerings, to provide staff with support in teaching critical reading, to offer some type of professional development on a year-long basis.
I know it seems like the critical reading is significantly lower than the other areas of weakness that you described, but are those other areas of weakness going to be included in the school improvement plans? That you said that
Depending, again, this is a 7 to 12 review, but most of the schools will do their own data analysis. Because vocabulary, when you look at the district level scores, vocabulary and grammar are areas of weakness. Most school improvement plans at the elementary level will address those.
Okay.
But again, they're fairly well and comprehensively addressed in the adoption of the new ELA program. So how, the level of focus on that is going to depend on what other issues the individual buildings are looking at. Because it is an initiative already in place, it's more supporting and maintaining momentum in those current initiatives.
The last area of concern that came out of the review was research process skills, and this resulted through conversations with the high school staff. In grades 9 and 10, they felt that students were having trouble managing the process of going through the various steps for research and developing a well-written research paper. So what the committee did was we went back and we looked at the curriculum in grades 7 and 8 and the state frameworks, and we found that in grades 7 and 8, not all students are being asked to write a research paper, and that the emphasis on the various skills that are needed to write a research paper, it varies from classroom to classroom. And then in looking at the standards, we found that we have those grade band standards again, where it's not specifically assigned to grade 7 or grade 8. So the committee looked at those standards and they broke them down into grade level specific standards and assigned specific skills where they should be introduced and mastered for each grade level. And the teachers at grades 7 and 8 are currently working to incorporate those skills into the curriculum. And the last recommendation was that all students in grades 7 and 8 be required to write a research paper and that rubrics be developed to evaluate those. And that will be done this summer as the curriculum is rewritten.
Now, the proposal you've put before us is about $36,000.
Yes.
And that is in the textbook adoption account, Paul, already?
Just under 34,000 in the textbook adoption.
So just for the committee's sake, almost all of this is covered without going to the surplus. It's covered in the regular budget amount.
We didn't have a slide that said any questions, but certainly we'll take any questions that you may have.
No, you
if
don't
anyone
need a
has
slide.
any.
You know,
If there's any other things that we can answer.
I just have a couple questions. In regards to the Terranovas and the MCAS, are they so aligned that you feel comfortable with what you're seeing in one and what you're seeing in the other? Or is there some variation?
There is a little bit of variation. On some of the discrete skills, our students actually performed a little bit stronger on the MCAS than they did on the Terra Nova. So there is some variation, so that's why we always compare both sources, and then we also look at classroom performance assessments to try to see what's the most valid measure and how do they all relate.
Are most of the surrounding towns doing the type of testing that we're doing for comparisons, or are they
Yeah.
using something else, or?
Most of the towns do have an alternate to the MCAS, whether it's Terra Nova, Iowa, California Test of Basic, what's that one?
Right, and there's one other one I'll think of for just one
CAT, I think
second.
it's called. But most districts do because, again, the MCAS is one shot in time. It's, most districts will add an additional tool so that you can cross-reference and measure the validity and what the real areas of concern are.
Jeff, this might even be a question for you in the high school and the SAT.
Do you want to
Are
come?
the students taking advantage of the review courses that we're offering? Are they listening to the fact that some of the colleges are now saying they're not going to rely on SATs, so therefore they're not putting as much into it? And what percentage of our students actually take the SATs? Like, is it 80%, 85%? What is it at this point?
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head. It's close to 90.
Close to 90,
Yeah.
okay.
One of the interesting dilemmas we have this year is we kind of beat the bushes for our SAT program for next year. And one of the dilemmas it created is we have a very high subscription in English and in math. But the flip side of that is it affected our art programs and our tech ed programs because we drew from that pool to increase those numbers. And I really believe that the increases in SATs will be directly related to the students that get involved in those programs. So the dilemma is to balance what we have with the SAT and MCAS, because we're providing enrichment or remediation in both those programs, but yet maintain the integrity in our art and tech ed courses as well. So
Have we ever offered the SAT review as an after-school type of thing to supplement so that we're not taking away from, quote, the well-rounded student that wants to take advantage of these other programs?
I think that's the thought process that we'll have to look at in upcoming years. You know, a funny story, in my former district, we offered it for free in the evening, and of course we got no one to sign up for the program, and then we charged $150 and we were oversubscribed, so there's something about cost sometimes in the process. So,
Isn't that incredible?
but I think we're getting to a point in some of our programs, whether we're talking about remediation, not to get too far off the subject, whether we're talking about remediation
important.
or enrichment, to maybe look at evening programs, because you do run out of time, and also if you want to be considered, I guess, a comprehensive high school, there's certain, I guess, criteria I think you have to uphold and maintain as far as the integrity of the curriculum is concerned. So I think that's an issue we'll end up talking about more in the upcoming years.
Do you think how hard someone tries, or gets into the extra programs has anything to do with the fact that there are some significant colleges that are starting to move away from an SAT requirement? I mean, you see more and more in the newspaper that this one's dropping it, that one's dropping it. I mean, how much does that affect our students and
I've been told just the opposite over time, that
Okay.
the SAT is still one of the leading criteria because all students that apply to those upper level schools are getting, top recommendations.
Yeah.
They're getting A's in their courses. So again, there's what's the other criteria they utilize? It could be the essay, it could be the SAT. So where they're moving away, there are also colleges that still put emphasis on the SAT program.
Okay.
What about the MCAS remediation classes? I know you're in the process of determining the course schedule for the students for next year. What kind of response are you getting from those students who have been recommended for the math and the English MCAS remediation classes? Because I know in the past that those haven't been very well attended.
They're oversubscribed. In fact, even with the potential extra math person, we're still 3 sections off as far as being able to cover the number of students. Now, the dilemma is this: as we go on, MCAS math seems to be the problematic area, but we still have to remediate MCAS English as well. Now you're bringing science on board, and then a few years down the road you're bringing social studies, history on board. We can't cover it all. So I don't, without saying we're going to be a core school and we're going to teach 5 subjects, something's got to give in the process. So we're batting those plans and thought processes around of what's the best way to enrich and remediate at the same time, maintain the integrity of what we're trying to do. So it'll be an interesting dilemma. But yeah, we have a meeting with Dr. Norton in a couple of days to discuss just that question. So.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Does anybody have any questions about this? Or?
I was just going to make one other comment about the SATs because it's something that sort of you brought up with in talking about colleges' decisions to look at the SATs. There are actually some states across the country right now that are considering looking at using the SAT as their state test for grade 10 students. For fiscal purposes, that you don't have to pay all the money that you do to generate your own test to score and evaluate. So that's just something that's out there on the horizon that you should be aware of.
Well, this program would complete the ELA from 1 through 12, since we last year funded 1 through 6. This would complete 7 through 12.
That's correct.
And so, if this is what you think we need to do, then I think my view is we need to go forward and adopt the program and now have a consistent program that will be 1 through 12 that will address specifically the weaknesses we have, and in the district improvement plans, as at least Kate and I have seen the draft, we are now getting to district improvement plans that are very quantifiable, very measurable, that we'll be able to look on a year-to-year basis and see the progress. And we'll be presenting those to the committee probably sometime at the next meeting, maybe in May. But I think that the community is going to be pleased because of the work that's been done. They're not just, I don't want to say fluff because that's disrespectful, but in the past they were so general, it's really hard to measure. This new plan, this new district improvement plan that has spent thousands of hours put into putting this document together, really gets to grade by grade and subject by subject, starting to measure so that the taxpayer can see whether or not we're returning for them what we should be returning based on the money that they're investing. And although we don't want to let the cat out of the bag at this point because it's still a draft, we're trying to finalize it, get to the committee. I think the entire administrative team should be very proud of where they are with it, and I think you'll be pleased when you see it.
Understand, you're talking about the district improvement plan. Now, just to extend it, the school councils are using a very similar template. We've worked out the bugs with the middle school's SIP. Remember, they brought the first of the 4 core values, that part of their school improvement plan, and then working it out for the district improvement plan, making sure that it's broad enough to cover everything, but at the same time allowing that movement within each one of the schools. That means that each one of the principals not only has been reviewing the district improvement plan, working on their own school improvement plans, but working with the school councils. So my hat's off to school councils also.
I would move to approve the request.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
5 in
Thank you very
favor,
much.
Wendy?
Thank you for all
Thank
that
you.
work.
Next is discussion of school committee drug and alcohol use policy, followed by discussion of student discipline.
Martha, if I could, I think that was put on there based on some comments that came up at our April 20th policy meeting. At that meeting, I had mentioned that I had received calls from a number of parents who were concerned that in our schedule that we've laid out for reviewing policies, the section on student handbooks was going to actually be done after school was over. The feeling was that, number one, parents are very concerned about what we do with discipline or how we might change discipline, and that if we were to move it out of the cycle, we might have more active participation by the parents. Second of all, the handbooks go to print the end of June. And obviously, if we want to affect next year's handbooks, it would be important to approve whatever changes we might make before that so that we can get those in. Dr. Norton has previously brought up suggestions to us that as we look at discipline, as we look at drug and alcohol use, it's important for administration, the principals, the parents, the students, the school committee, all to come together in a public forum and discuss both the existing policies and procedures, the lack of policies and procedures, and some changes. And Dr. Norton has expressed in her view over the past some changes that she would like to see made. And obviously the principals have their own view. And so because of the importance of these issues, I think it's worth moving up. I don't know that the committee's prepared tonight or administration's prepared to have an in-depth discussion. But what I'd like to suggest to the committee is that either A, we set a subcommittee and have a public meeting with parents, administrators, principals, et cetera, to work through the current policies and procedures, or if the committee is not comfortable doing it in a subcommittee format, that we schedule a meeting where parents have ample notice to come, students have ample notice to come, principals and administrators have a chance to prepare for us their recommendations on what should change. We've talked about things like zero tolerance and what is zero tolerance. In addition to that, we talked on the 20th about the all-night graduation party that Foxborough hosts by parents, similar to many other communities. And we talked about what are our policies regarding that. They're using school facilities. If something were to happen to a student, are we liable as the school committee for giving them access? Do we have a lease? Do we have a rental agreement? And even if we waive the rental, we should have an agreement with them. And if they're going to be on school property, they need to comply with school policies. And so that raises questions about drug and alcohol and nursing and other kinds of things. And it's just too important of a topic not to have a public forum, a public discussion where parents and administrators and teachers and students can come together and debate the issues, discuss the issues, so that the school committee can then make an informed decision. And so it would be my suggestion that either we form a subcommittee and have a public meeting where people can come and participate, or we schedule a session for the full committee before the end of school with ample time to make a decision so that we can get them into the handbooks in time for the printing.
I totally agree. Of all of the policies that the school committee needs to address, the big overriding one is student discipline, but I understand all the other ones fall into place also. And they all need to fit, or your administrators, those who administer your policies, are going to be totally confused. But I think it's such a large one that there should be a lot of discussion. I certainly would be more than happy to be a part of that, as well as Dr. Martis, just to keep us moving forward, make sure that he's comfortable with what is going to be happening in the school district going forward, and all of the administrators. I think it's critical. It's a good plan, Mr. Harrington.
And I just don't know that a Friday evening works well for the community, and it's such an important topic that I think we have to do it other than a Friday night.
We could certainly have an extra Monday meeting. Yeah, that's all.
I think it would be good to have a full committee
Yeah.
I think that, I'm sure we all want to be a part of it and have a voice and hear, too, what people are saying. And I think a subcommittee would limit those who weren't on.
Well, then you got to bring it back to the whole committee, and I think
Right.
sometimes when you skip the middleman, let's all hear it at the same time and make a decision together. I think that's important.
I agree. I think subcommittees can do a very fine job at expediting and doing a lot of work, but this is so important to us that I think, and we've taken some stands. So to get it on our agenda and to talk in depth as a group, I think that's what's important. My only question is there anything that, Dr. Norton, that you feel that we need to do? And I don't know if we should ask Mr. Theodos. I see Janet Fisher in the audience. Is there anything that you need to bring before us so that we're not holding up the printing of the handbook? Is there anything that's immediate on the discipline?
Whatever you
issue?
decide on the policy is going to immediately impact that handbook. I think that should be a lot of the discussion that we have at this meeting. It's not only to discuss the words of the policy and take the stance of the committee, but also to talk about how that's going to be implemented. And so that those handbooks can be updated as quickly as possible. Some of those, once the clarifications, our principals know their handbooks well. So they will know from the policy, if you do this, how it will impact it, if it does that, how it will impact it, and they need to take it back to their school councils. But I think that's also very definitely a part of the conversation. I'm looking at Dr. Alardi nodding out of the corner of my eye. The same is true for the elementary school. It's not just the high school, but understand each level, the elementary, the middle school, and the high school, all have their own handbooks. It impacts each one of those handbooks.
Why don't we do this, then? Everybody give Wendy availability. And let's
For
see
another Monday night?
for an extra Monday night, and see what we can come up with. And certainly, we need the principals from all of the schools and the high school, and assistants, whoever wants to attend, and let's, have a, I'll go ahead.
It may be difficult on a Monday night, only because the first Monday in May is the election, the second Monday is the town meeting, the third meeting is our regular meeting, and the fourth meeting is our Memorial Day. So,
All right, well, let's see
Dr.
what other
Martis
nights.
shared with me that he is in budget. We're ahead of him, but he's in budget, and his Monday nights are tied up
Okay,
for
all right,
the
then
remainder
try
of the
for
month.
different
So I
night.
think find another night that Dr. Martis can come.
right, and it might work out better, because we want to get it done in May.
Okay.
Because I understand that they're going to be printed at the end of June, so if we need to take anything under advisement or get additional information, we can't push too late into June to do that, and this is just too important to delay.
If we can somehow avoid a Tuesday night, because unfortunately, it's a late working night for me. And having
I
booked.
think Dr. Martis has school committee meetings on Tuesday
Okay.
nights, too.
Well, because of this budget, his
Yeah.
nights
Monday.
are, many of his nights are being compromised. So.
All right, well,
See
whatever
what he's
we.
got.
Is there a way to tabulate, though, the number of changes? I mean, is the high school, the school council and the high school recommending some specific changes to the discipline code?
I'm not so sure the discipline code, no. I think,
We'll get yelled at if you're not there.
no, I think our main concern is that we're in compliance, and so I think that whatever the overall umbrella that we would need to follow with our school policies, we'll take our lead from the school committee. And I would anticipate that we would be pretty close to being in compliance unless there was, some radical change. So, but either way, I think whatever the will of the committee is, we can make it work from our end.
I think what we probably should do, if we have a policy in our handbook that's either not in compliance at this point, why don't we, when you put a call into Jim Hardy, and you know how he's doing what the mask recommendation is because it complies with state and whatever, if you could ask him to get us, to forward to us on student discipline, whatever he has,
Okay.
so that we'll have the most updated.
He could bring it.
Yeah, because I'm not sure which section it falls in that we're doing. So in order for us to have it, if you can pull it out and get that to us, bring it to us for Friday night, that'd be.
Well, the other thing that I think is important, Dr. Norton has reiterated, whether it's weapons, whether it's alcohol or drugs, that we cannot have a generic policy or procedure. And we've already agreed at our last meeting, I believe, for instance, not to allow alcohol on school property, even if someone were to rent
Right.
the gym for a dinner, for a function. We've said, no, we don't want alcohol on the premises.
And I
So,
know we've dealt with that in the past and said, no,
Right.
it's a fundraiser.
so Jan has
certain opinions on where our weaknesses are in our current policy, and I know has recommendations that she'd like to make. I'm sure that she will talk to her administrative team and get their views, and I would hope that you would talk to Dr. Martis in advance. And then those issues that you would like to propose, additional discipline or stricter policy, whatever it might be, you could, before we pick a night, let's make sure that Dr. Norton, Dr. Martis, and their team have adequate time to prepare their recommendations for us so that the parents, the administrators, the teachers, the students, and ourselves all hear it simultaneously. And what I would like to do is I'd like to try to make sure that we do a press release to the newspapers, that we do communication to the parents and through the schools, so that those that are interested, and from my perspective is that if you were going to recommend A, B, and C, then when we send the notice home to parents, we ought to say that what we're going to be discussing is recommendation A, B, and C. So that we schedule the meeting close enough but far enough out so that whatever they're going to recommend, the public has a chance to see and think and talk about and prepare to come to the meeting to discuss. And I think if there's anything that's controversial or if it's not controversial, at least the parents and the administrators and the teachers and the students all will have had a chance to see it in advance, like we generally do. And then they can form their opinions and come to the meeting and voice their opinions.
I will do my best. Again, we're at the whim of several different
Correct.
schedules here. Do our best to get that done as quickly as possible.
The only issue, and I think that's a great approach that we have, the only question is the timing of the all-night graduation party, because that is June, graduation is June 10th. So that will be upon us, and I think we had some strong feelings that we want to send to the individuals, that it might be appropriate that the organizers get that input from us sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I've actually asked Dr. Norton to survey the other communities that have these functions to find out what policies they have, what procedures they have, what requirements they have, so we can benchmark what we're doing against some other communities. So she was sending a notification out today to other superintendents asking for that input, and hopefully, she said often 20 to 25 will respond out of all the superintendents in the state. So that would help gather some data for us as well, but agreed that we want to get to those folks as soon as possible.
Yeah, not
Would it
every
be
city
helpful
in
to
town
talk
has it on
about
that
somewhat, I
process.
mean, I would like them to have a heads up. I mean, I don't know if any are watching. How do we communicate with those organizers, those parents who've given so much of their time? And it's a huge effort. It's done every year. Obviously, we have some issues that have come up, particularly, we know that our students don't drink on the premises. I think the organizers and the parent chaperones do a wonderful job to make sure that that doesn't happen. However, because graduation is at early afternoon, and they don't come until 10 o'clock. Often, we do have graduating seniors who are coming, and they are under the influence of either alcohol or drugs. And I know, again, the parent chaperones have had a procedure, but I think we have all gotten some input that perhaps some additional training or some other items need to be put into place. And I just would say that for these dedicated volunteers and for our seniors who have looked forward to that, we probably don't want to wait until the beginning of June to give the message that says we're concerned and we want to make sure that you are aware of this, or we're very concerned based on the numbers that we hear. Here's what we'd like you to do, and that the procedures are fine, but I would not want to wait too much longer before we have some kind of dialogue that gets communicated to those very hardworking organizers.
They're in the cafeteria, by the way, already, some of them painting away. So no, I agree with you, Kate.
I think you need to define, I know that you addressed the alcohol policy at the last meeting last Friday. However, you need to define that. Are you talking about you're only not selling it and you're not serving it? Are you also extending it to people do not come on campus in our buildings under the influence? And then understand, once you establish that in your policy, then it becomes procedural. What does Jeff do about it? So that a parent after an all-night program sees a student come in and thinks maybe they could possibly be under the influence, so they have them take a nap someplace. Is that, if once you have a policy that says we don't want them here, under the influence, it means that we'll set up procedures for them to go home. Police can call the parents can come and pick up the kiddos and take them on home. So understand that it's not just one policy we're talking about. One policy fits into the next policy, fits into the next policy. And that's why I think all your discussion of the policy is so critical, but they're not in isolation.
Right.
Jan, I think what bothers me the most about a child coming here that's been, a young adult at this point, that's coming here to an all-night party who might have partaken of either drugs or alcohol, as a lay person, as a parent, as someone who doesn't see it on a day-to-day basis, that's a tough judgment call as to whether or not that child has crossed the line, as to how much they've taken in. And I don't ever want us to look back and say that somebody's just sleeping something off and they've crossed that line as far as how much they've consumed. And I don't think, there's a little bit of being naive about something like this, that having been in the medical profession as long as I have, it's a tough call even for us. And the fact that if you had breathalyzers on board, that the police should be immediately notified, and I feel very strongly about this, for them to come over and assess, what has taken place here and whether or not that child should be allowed to stay or leave. And personally, I think the child should be asked to leave, parents should be called, and it's not because we're trying to embarrass parents or embarrass children. We're talking about the safety and welfare of that child, and I don't ever want to wake up the next day and find out that someone that they thought was sleeping is not sleeping.
Yes.
And is in a permanent sleep. And that would be a nightmare none of us would ever want to visit. So I think, we can sit back and we can say that, this might happen. You have to face the possibility that it could happen.
There's any number of, prior to coming here, other than working in Harwich, I worked in a high school, an inner city high school for 16 years. I was an administrator for 16 years, and for 6 of those years. And one of the years was in charge of major discipline. I can assure you that the police can come and work with the administrators and with the parents and help them understand what it looks like when a student comes in or somebody comes in under the influence. If it's that close of a line that you're saying, I don't know, that's an entirely different issue. Mr. Theodos and I have been working on it this year because we had some difficulties in the fall. He's been working with his administrators also to better be able to recognize when a student is under the influence. There are some very definite signs of it. If you recall, there was a football game that I didn't get to see because we had some girls who had drunk some alcohol. So there was some question about, are they under the influence? Not to go into it, but the police took them through some steps that do not involve breathalyzers. Would not advocate those at all. Everybody takes some breath out. That's, in my opinion, not necessary. But those students that you suspect, and the police, I'm confident, would be more than happy to come over and work with the people who will be at the doors to make sure that if there is some suspicion, to walk them through different steps to make sure that, in the end, it's not to exclude anybody, it's to make sure that they're safe. So I, as an adult, am standing here at the high school. I see a young person come here under the influence. It's my duty to make sure they get home safely. You gave the worst case scenario, and that is that they go into a permanent sleep. But understand, we're still talking about children. These young people have been driving cars. Parents need to take them home and make sure they're safe. That is one of our responsibilities, and I think that it is something that we can address with the support of the school committee and their policies.
Yeah, just one quick thing. I also think that there's a perception that those post-graduation parties are school-sanctioned events, and they're not. There's no administration there. You know, teachers may go in to visit and say their last goodbyes. But I think that it's important for the people running it to understand. And I have to say, I don't know too many school systems that have the post-graduation party in their high school. It's usually at a rented venue where there's other staff people there as well. You know, I'm not opposed to it, and I just think that, you know, if there were problematic pieces, there's like anything else. I think the kids have to understand that they set the groundwork for the next classes to come, and if they can't do it the right way, then you don't have it in that particular venue. The other piece that makes it difficult is it's uncomfortable for a parent who's given their time, like you said, Mrs. Slattery, to make that hard call about, is that student drunk, is they not drunk, are they just tired? And I think sometimes they're afraid to go to the officer on duty and say, I need your help in assessing where we are with this student. So I think there was a combination of issues there that kind of worked against us in that process. And so I think the parents need to be aware, the organizers need to be aware of our expectations for them when they rent that facility. Certainly the policy is a step towards that piece.
Well, and I think part of what we talked about is that we don't know whether there's a formal agreement between us and the parents. And if someone's child were hurt there because of a fight, because someone was drunk or on drugs, or someone fell asleep and didn't wake up, because it's on school property, is there a lawsuit going to be filed against the town? And even if at the end of the day we weren't going to be held liable, we could incur, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal costs. So it's incumbent upon us, that's what we talked about on the 20th, it's incumbent upon us as school committee members to inquire what are the procedures, what is the process, who is in charge, engage a dialogue with them, and make sure there's no doubt in anybody's mind what the rules are if you're going to be on school property.
You know, I attended this week, there was a night out for those attending the prom, that they had to sign a statement saying that they would not partake in any alcohol usage, drug usage. And I was very impressed with how that was presented, the orderliness of it all. People seemed to really understand what the contract was saying, and you needed to sign it and then, you know, give it to the high school. I don't know, again, if that's something that can be used. I think there's so many gray areas when we talk about this, even this evening, and I think that what so impressed me was that there was such clarity with that whole procedure. And I think that that's what we need when we're discussing our policy as a district in terms of renting out a building, in terms of our acceptance or non-acceptance of behaviors that go on, like at an all-night party. So I know that we are very capable of doing it because, like I said, it was very impressive how everyone responded to it, and it sounds like the history of it is also very impressive, that there haven't been incidents at the proms where people have not followed through on the contract. So.
No, that was instituted prior to me getting here, and like Mr. Heinrich
As a
just
result
said,
of the lawsuit, as I recall.
No, but I think
years ago.
Mr. Heinrich brought the point forward that in the 10 years they've had this contract signing, there hasn't been any incidences. So that's a proactive piece that, you know, has been.
I believe there was one that resulted in a lawsuit. A former patriot sued the town because his daughter, and the town ended up, if I remember correctly, settling out of court over the discipline.
Well, that was one of the reasons they started the prom contract, so that there would not be. That was
There's no gray area.
I thought
no gray area.
she had signed it and that was part of the issue. But I don't
No,
know.
there wasn't a
It was in
contract
effect
at that time.
I think this all probably came about as a.
It was discussed, but there was not, I mean, one of the things that the attorney said, there should be a clear contract, and then.
Which is what led to that then.
Yeah.
There's a question.
Good evening, Andres Naveda, 94 Spruce. I had a question. I'm not entirely familiar with the all-night party, but some of you might be. People under 21, or is anybody coming to that party over 21 other
No,
than
it's only the graduates of this, whoever graduated that day is allowed to come to this party.
And do we have any possible graduate that is over 21?
Nobody is.
So how much are they how much is the school committee by policy going to allow them to drink before they're called under the influence, if the law says that they should not be drinking under 21?
Well,
That's what we're addressing on
That's
this.
what we're-
Nobody,
Yeah, because-
nobody should be drinking on the
Right.
front.
No-
That's the law.
they're not drinking in front of
Period.
us.
Oh,
They're
no,
not
no, no, but if they
not on
come
school
in-
premises.
If they come in, they shouldn't have any.
Right,
Right.
but that's what
And
we're
it's not a
saying.
matter of how much. because
It's
I
no
was-
consumption on or in you prior to arriving at an event.
It's the how do you test?
Yes.
How do I
Yeah.
know, looking at you, that you've not had 2 sips of beer or 2 cases of beer? I
And
can
now
tell
you-
the 2 cases, but the 2 sips or 1 can, that's what we're talking about. How do we ensure that nobody who comes to the party has taken drugs or alcohol?
And do you want to make that determination subjectively or objectively? That's something that the
That's what
committee
we're
will have to
discussing.
do.
That's what we're discussing.
Thank you.
You're right on.
And what we're saying, Mr. Navedo, is that in the past, there may not have been as robust a discussion, but since this committee has worked hard with drug and alcohol abuse, we're
want it
taking this
clear.
very seriously, and we want to try to clarify it going forward.
The other issue, and we talked about alcohol and drugs, obviously, for the all-night party, there's another issue. And as many kids are impacted, not just from being under the influence, but there are almost as many accidents and fatalities for those students who are driving while fatigued. The other, and I don't think we've had a chance to really look and question this, and that's why I think this is so timely. But what are we doing when we are, in essence, hosting an event, the kids go home, students go home, and graduates go home around 5, 6 in the morning, after being up all night? What is our liability also from that regard? So I think, it's something that we probably do want to be clear on, and if we can actually get this scheduled and get the word out to those parents who are organizing and been working on the all-night party, I think it's important that we get it on the schedule for the 21st of May.
I think the important thing is here, this is all things that have been brought up in the past, and unfortunately, I think we're at a point where everything needs to be reiterated, and that the line has to be drawn, and we have to take a very strong stance on what we're saying about what will and will not be tolerated on grounds, and I think it is what it is, and unfortunately, we're going to have to deal with it.
Well, it's an opportunity this year to send a message, and then to ask the parents to come back and give us a report. What did they learn? What was easy? Because I think the more we have the opportunity to dialogue, then we'll be able to.
And I don't want everybody to have the impression that there's, 90% of the kids show up. That's not what we're dealing with. But my concern is if there's one, and if there's a problem from it, we're all going to have to live with it. And I find that personally and professionally unacceptable.
Well, one of the things that we talked about at our drug and alcohol forum that evening was the fact that some parents look upon it and say, well, all the kids are in my house, I took their keys, and so it's okay. And, we've been talking as a school committee that under the age of 21, it's not okay. And that we can't have it's okay in the house, or it's okay in this circumstance, or okay in that. We need to have a consistent message. And the discussion on the 20th said we need to go beyond just the message in the school. If we're going to allow someone to use our facility on an overnight basis, we need to make sure that whatever our policy ends up being, that they understand it and they're willing to comply with it. And if they're not willing to comply with it, as Mr. Theodo said, they can rent a facility someplace else and handle it under their own circumstances. But if they're going to use town property or school property, we have to set the guidelines for them. They have to be able to agree to those. And we just want to be fair. We want an open dialogue. We're not trying to all be prudes here, but there are laws and there are rules, and we have to set a standard.
I don't think it's a matter of being a prude at this point. It's a matter of safety and liability. And I think that's my major concern, because I don't ever want to look back and say, what if?
Well, I think you bring up an interesting point, Mary, about the parents that say, take your keys. Because again, we don't want the all-night party to be, whatever that small population is, to say, we'll take your keys and you can hang here.
Right.
You know, we don't, you know, and you'll
That's
leave
not
at
our
5 o'clock or
responsibility.
6
Right.
o'clock. We don't want that, and that's why I think, because, you know, having heard from parents myself about their concerns about that, I think that there needs to be more clarity and less of a gray area.
Right.
So
And you
that's
know
why I
what,
think
it's a great party, I've chaperoned it, I've been there, you know, the raffles and the entertainment and.
Gifts.
And the gifts and keeping these
amazing.
kids in one place, I mean, it's a great night for them, but it's our responsibility to make a great night, the best it can be and the safest it can be. Okay, next subject, budget statement update, Mr. Jackson.
Thank you. The committee has a revised budget statement that I passed out tonight. Changed the format based on some input from Mr. Harrington. And hopefully it'll be a little clearer to understand. One of the highlights, or a couple of the highlights of the budget statement, we've seen a great increase in the number of copy clicks, if you will, the number of copies that are made on our copy machines, above and beyond what we had anticipated our volume to be. And as a result, I've had to make some changes to set aside funds to pay for that. In addition, as noted before, there's $92,000 that's been allocated in the textbook adoption account, 76, and I've rounded all these numbers, 76,000 to take care of the math program, 14,000 for the supply items that would augment or supplement the math program, as well as $2,000 for the new ELA program that was voted tonight. I'll go over the highlights of the budget statement. So in the old budget statement, the one that you received the other night, there was a narrative, and I did away with the narrative and set it up in a columnar fashion with, actually I was using Excel, to try to make it a little clearer. But the other piece that I added to the statement that was not on the statement that was distributed Thursday night was the indication of transfers between line items. And there had been a discussion about budget transfers. So in compliance with that discussion and to try to explain and show, we're showing budget transfers between lines. So the highlights in the first section of Burrell, you can see as an example, and this is somewhat confusing. We've transferred $110 from the principal office other and transferred into principal's office contracted services, $110. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm already confused.
New form.
We transferred money from office to contracted services, and the easiest way to look at this is if it's a positive number, then that adds to the surplus. If it's a negative number, it detracts from the surplus.
Okay.
So it's opposite of, so this reads opposite of what I think the normal indication would be. So the second little piece, there's $697 that was transferred from principal's office contracted services to instructional equipment repairs. I'll also tell you that for the FY08 budget, you'll see some adjustments sometime in July and August where I intend to reduce some of the monies that we find or have currently budgeted and historically have budgeted in principal's office contracted services, and they've always historically been for the click charges for the copy machines, which really shouldn't be there, and I'll move that expense down into equipment repair, which would be a fair representation of the expenses.
One of the issues that Paul's trying to address is the concern that committee members expressed that if you move $100 from one account into another that nets out to zero, if Paul doesn't show you those, then does the committee actually approve the transfers? So what he's trying to do here is to give you as transparent a view as possible that many of these transfers are just a wash. We're over in one account and under another. But this was so you could actually see and approve when you approve the report, you're approving those transfers between accounts as well. So many of them will net out to zero. Some will be pure surplus, and he'll tell you how much of that contributes to the $80,000 plus surplus. You'll see which accounts are over budget, et cetera. So it's meant to be a little bit clearer. And I think once you get used to it, you'll find it easier.
And if, sometimes when you're close to it, you lose sight of the forest for the trees, if you will. So that if somebody has any suggestions, I'm more than happy to take the suggestion and make a modification. So in the borough accounts, which would be salary and expenses, we see a net change of $2,136, which would add to the surplus. And if
This
there,
would add to the surplus.
yep, the 2136 would add to the surplus. If anybody has questions, jump out in case I don't notice. At the IGO school, we have a net change of $5,311, which would be a loss or a reduction from the surplus. The other transfers have netted out to zero, and it was a new maternity leave, which was a net cost. Taylor School, we have a net change of $1,235, and that was a positive to the surplus due to a teacher resignation. At the Ahern, there were a number of transfers out of existing supply accounts with money being transferred into the equipment repair account. We actually did not transfer enough funds to cover that, so that there was a $983 reduction in the surplus based on the additional cost of the copies. At the high school, there was $1,054 cost of the medical coordinator that we actually paid for out of the grant. There were increased copy costs, which was a direct reduction of the surplus of $2119. Then we transferred money from the general supply account to the textbook account, which ultimately was a wash. We picked up $5222 for extracurricular salaries that were not filled. We did not use $4,000 of Metco tutor salary money. There was a net transfer of zero, but $200 from principal's office, other, and non-instructional equipment. And then we transferred money between two medical accounts within the nursing accounts for a net change or increase to the surplus of $8,157. Special education, we picked up $90 on a replacement. There was a transfer of $7,500 from contract therapies to contract evaluations, net zero. We had an increase in our projection for out-of-district transportation of $18,333. I'll point out that earlier in the year, we had projected a $15,000 surplus, and I had removed the money from that account. So the $18,333 that I'm saying is an additional cost, well, it absolutely is an additional cost, but only $3,333 of it was above and beyond the original budget number. So out of, $252,000 budget number, we're projecting now to overspend that account by $3,333. We've had a retroactive tuition adjustment granted by the Department of Education, which we're informed of, which is a net loss to the surplus of $4,665. So the net change in the special ed budget page is $22,908 as a net loss to the surplus page. Music, net transfer between equipment repairs and instructional supplies, change is zero. Music and the Ahern, we've transferred some money between the accounts, net change of zero. Same thing for the high school. We had a minor change in health and phys ed, net change of zero. Technology, we picked up $7,231 in unfilled positions. We're transferring that unused salary amount to the contracted services line. We've actually provided those services through the hiring of outside contractors. In addition, we've transferred money from the supply account to the contracted service account to take care of the additional changes that we're making to the website. Net change of technology was a $48 increase to the surplus. Transportation, we've reprojected all of the salaries associated with our to and from school transportation. Net change of a loss of $1,541 to transportation salaries. Plant, we've increased the projection for electricity by $5,358. That includes, in round figures, $4,900 that we agreed to spend for the retrofit of the lamps at Borough. Heat, we've reduced an additional $9,000, which I think brings us up to a $106,000 reduction in our heat account this year. We were really lucky. We had some money that we originally had transferred up into painting salaries. We're transferring some money out of painting salaries into the custodial sub-account / summer help. And the person that actually has been doing a lot of the painting is actually filling in as a custodial sub. So to accurately reflect where we're spending the money, I've transferred it. In addition, where school is going to, the last day of school now is projected to be June 19th, where we did not take any snow days this year, 5 days earlier, we've built in an additional 5 days of summer help for students that we hire in the summer. This, Michael Leary's a little nervous about the amount of work that we have to do prior to the vinyl floor tile abatement process at the Agla School. Every room associated will have to be emptied of all furniture and items and stored in a somewhat logical fashion so that when the old tile is taken, the rug is taken up, the old tile is taken up, and the new tile is down, then it all goes back. And he felt he's going to need every hour that he can possibly muster, so that we've added money to cover those extra 5 days by the students. Still, we have a net change to the surplus of an additional $6,756. On the district-wide page, we've recalculated the sick leave buyback. We had 3 teachers that we had budgeted sick leave buyback for that have decided not to retire, that will stay. As a result, we've freed up $20,285. We'd also projected money for another position, a non-teaching position, and we did not use all of the funds that we had projected for that, which contributed to the $20,285. We've reprojected the actual cost of our instructional teams and mentors and picked up $4,900. It was mentioned earlier that the testing cost was $4,519 over budget. That will be a reduction to the surplus. We have collaborative specialized programs. We increased the school to work, which is probably not the right title for that.
School to career.
School to career, which I'll change the next time. So that was a loss of $2,509. Textbook adoption, $76,000 for Harcourt Math, $14,000 for the additional manipulatives, and $22,000, for the additional funds for the ELA. Net change, a reduction of surplus of $73,843. Superintendent's office, vacation buyback we have projected for the superintendent, for the business administrator. We've projected a $10,000 reduction in contracted services advertising. In addition, we reduced the contracted service account by $18,257. That's a result of, we originally had projected a $20,000 expenditure for the superintendent search. The actual cost to the town for the superintendent search is $1,743, which has contributed positively to the surplus, $18,257. In addition, we've projected we'll need an additional $12,933 in legal services. Our legal services budget is up over the original budget. We'd already transferred $6,000 into that account. We're transferring another $12,933 in anticipation of our April, May, and June bills. After we receive the April bill, we'll take another look and decide. We don't have the April bills yet. I've had one call from one of the attorneys, and it wasn't far enough out of the ballpark projection that would warrant an additional change to that $12,933. And this account covers both the standard attorney's fees for day-to-day operations of the district and negotiations, contractual issues, but also this is where we charge any special ed attorney fees in the event we have legal clarifications or hearings. So it's a combination account of 2 specialized areas.
So at this point, Paul, the surplus is roughly $88,000?
Yes.
The total surplus roughly $88,000.
Yes.
I think that, Jan, you're working a list that you take back to the committee in the late May, early June timeframe for your
Yes.
proposals for that?
Yes.
Do you need approval to accept this, Paul?
So moved.
Second. Katie, second it. All those in favor?
Aye.
5 in favor.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for your work.
Thank you, Paul.
If anybody has questions, don't be afraid to call.
Okay.
Because it would be all new and exciting if they
Just
were.
call tonight around midnight so he doesn't have to answer you.
Yes. Well, I didn't say to answer the call.
We got that.
Don't call me.
Okay, next is a substitute salary adjustment, Mr. Jackson.
I had met with the school committee, the subcommittee of the school committee several times. We've come up with a proposal. I don't recollect that the proposal was ever voted on or enacted. Ms.
We were
Lord,
waiting to defer that until the end of the year. We would not start it until, our thought was that we were not going to start it until next year.
Ms. Lord had asked me if I would take a look and make a projection as to what the cost of the district would be if we implemented the first box on the original substitute pay rate, which, in a nutshell, currently we pay all substitutes $65 a day. The proposal that had been on the table was that for non-degreed individuals, for the first 15 days that they subbed to the district, we would keep them at 65. On day 16, we'd move them to 70. For degreed individuals, we'd start them at 70. After 15 days, we'd move them to 75. And for certified teachers, we'd start at 75, and after 15 days, on the 16th day, we'd move them to 80. If this was implemented as of May 1st, based on what we're projecting for substitutes and based on projecting the population of individuals that will fill those positions, it would cost the district an additional $2,780. Given the balance that we're currently projecting in the substitute account, I can absorb the $2,780 if the committee so chose to implement this new top section of the pay schedule as of May 1st.
The benefit to doing this now is I'm already approving, because I have to by contract, many personal days that the teachers are taking. They haven't used them up. As the school year has gone by, it's already hitting my desk now with teachers taking those personal days, which they, by contract, have a right to. It's going to require additional substitutes, so the idea that we can attract more substitutes is very beneficial to the school district at this time.
And it starts off next year, because we said if you get your 15 days this year.
That's correct.
It would start, you'd start at the higher rate next year. I would move to implement it now.
I would like to see it go into effect tomorrow, May 1st.
Yeah, I would, that's my motion.
Right. Well, I second it.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
5 in favor, Wendy.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, other matters.
If I may, Martha,
Sure.
I just want to brief you, we talked about the community meeting to follow up the alcohol and drug forum, and that was, we announced it at our last meeting, that was held on Tuesday, April 24th. I'm very thrilled to just report, we had 10 parents show up, so that was great. We didn't even have enough supplies. Very committed group. They identified 6 action items, and in terms, anywhere from looking at very specific activities that they could support for our youth long-term, continued education of parents. They looked at how to use the media and get words out, not just like through newspapers, have tips for parents in the paper, talked about a website, and the individual is looking into getting a website for this community group, and the group is working on and willing to take suggestions for a name. And it was really very exciting. In an hour and a half, they were able to come up with 6 action items. The next meeting will be held, looks like will be Wednesday, June 6th at 7 p.m., and again, it'll be in the Foxborough High School cafeteria. Wendy, if you wouldn't mind putting the date in for our meeting, so we can maybe read it again and get the word out.
Martha, I had one item, and I meant to bring it up at the last meeting and I forgot, but I spoke to our friends at Cable Access. And as people know, or people may know, the town is in the process of negotiating with the cable company, and Verizon is trying to take local options away. And so there is a petition that keep it local. I support fair competition and local control. And I was asked if the school committee would make a motion to support this petition and to sign it by all of us and forward it to our local officials at the State House so that they know that Foxborough School Committee is very supportive of local control over the cable. As you all know, our Foxborough folks broadcast our meetings, and they do so much for the community, and it's important for the local community to keep control over some of that. And so it's a petition here, and it can be signed by an organization, a company, or individuals. They would like to encourage as many individuals as possible to go to the website, download this document, and to send it in. But they would also like us to make a formal motion in support of local control.
I would have no problem making such a motion, that the school committee, as a body, work to support this.
Okay.
But
So we could take their sample, and we could put it into a formal motion, and then all 5 school committee members sign it and send it in.
Okay.
I second that motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
5 in favor.
So Wendy, I'll give you a copy, and then if you can just draft it up, and then we'll all sign it, and we can send it in.
Now, Larry, you're saying that they also want to hear from a body. Should we still plan to send in as individuals? I mean, I myself wrote a letter, but...
It's more effective to contact your legislators individually.
Right.
It has much more weight if you
So
do
we
it as
can do that.
individuals
They would like
versus
us to do
phone
both.
Okay.
And they just wanted us to broadcast it so that someone who may be watching us and is not aware of this issue can go out to their website, download it. There have been some stories in the local newspaper as well. There's also a survey that you can take from the cable access where you rate their quality of their service, the price of their service, those kinds of things.
Madam Chairman?
Yes.
I saw a delightful musical at Weena. Yes. The 5th and 6th grade musical. I believe it was Saturday night, you were in school. And the new sound system that we appropriated was greatly appreciated, and we were able to hear much more clearly those beautiful young voices. It was very well received. And in the local newspaper, just this past week, I want to say how much I appreciate the quality of the people that work for our system and all kinds of capacities. I want to read members of the night shift custodial staff at the Ahern Middle School. There's John Jardin, Jerry Purchett, and Steve Mullins. Have a personal interest in the upcoming Relay for Life of Greater Foxborough to be held on June 22nd and 23rd. They, along with Mike O'Leary and Charlie Anderson, will be volunteering their services during the event. So if any of you missed this article, you can catch it before it goes in the recycling bin. And to show our concern and support for safety for all our young people, as I've been doing my long-term subbing, I'd like to have us to look in the possibility of us wearing little school staff IDs. It has a picture. It would say your school and would say what you're teaching. There is a concern in the high school that some of our young college graduates and some of our mature senior girls look quite the same, and people aren't sure who they are addressing. So it would relieve some confusion at the high school level when the subs come in. But it's you can clip it anywhere. You can wear it around your neck. But I'd like us to take this under consideration.
We're very definitely looking into it. I believe that our new program that we'll be purchasing will make that possible.
Great.
Wendy, did you have something?
Yes. I have a couple of sets of minutes that need minor changes, and I'd like to have the committees vote on these to
Okay.
revise them.
Which one first?
On March 29th March 19th of '07, when Hector Ballon came to address the committee, I thought, I was under the impression that he was reading from a letter from the Nevados.
Okay.
I was incorrect. So I have deleted that whole section completely and given you, I went back and reviewed the DVD,
Okay.
thanks to Cable, and I want to insert the new verbiage here that I've given you.
Would you just read it?
Sure. The new verbiage said, I'll read the whole paragraph. Mr. Ballon expressed his concern over having only 5 choices on the online survey dealing with the superintendent search. He also expressed his concerns regarding public document requests to the school committee, compliance with the open meeting law, conflict of interest, and minutes not being more detailed. Mr. Harrington asked Mr. Ballon if he read something at a future school committee, if he would make sure the copies were available for the committee and the public.
Okay.
So I would move to correct the error in the minutes with the new wording.
You have a second? Second. Katie, second it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And the other one?
The other one is October 16th of '06. And on page 2, I was referencing the policy workshop that was held, and I put down October 21st. And it should read September 30th, so it would be the correction of the date.
All right.
I would move to correct the record to reflect the September 30th, 2006 date.
A second? Second. Katie? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Do you have anything, Jane?
Not I.
Paul? Ingrid? Kate? Katie? Okay, it's my turn. I'm at the end. I'm always at the end. I'll wait.
Last but not least.
I'm very pleased to announce that the committee and Dr. Martis has reached a contract agreement, and I'll read you the major terms that are listed. 3 years with no rollover provision, running from July 1st through June 30th, 2010. Dr. Martis will notify us by July 1st, 2009, if he desires a new contract, and we will respond within 30 days with our intentions. If we agree, we will work to complete negotiations within 60 days. The school committee will determine annual goals, objectives within 60 days of the start date and annually by July 1st thereafter. Each school committee member will evaluate Dr. Martis annually on the goals and objectives. The chair will then create a composite evaluation, review it with him, and then release it to the public. The school committee will determine annual merit increases after the performance review, and there are no automatic raises. Dr. Martis will receive a salary of $165,000, 25 vacation days, and 15 sick days annually, and a disability plan similar to his predecessor. He has opted not to receive the $4,800 annual travel stipend that his predecessor had received. And for those adding up the contract costs, the total cost is about 7% more than what the prior superintendent's costs would have been in fiscal 2008, and probably 10% higher than that of any recently hired superintendent in the area who have no prior superintendent experience. However, this difference will be significantly reduced because Dr. Martis has declined to accept health coverage from us. So I think it's a very fair contract. He was very easy to deal with. He was very positive, and I just will be signing it as soon as the two of us can meet up with each other. So we're very pleased with this. Okay. Now, on a personal note, this is my last public performance as the chairman of the school committee. I've said in the past that I'm a firm believer that this should turn over, and I will stand by that. And I just want to thank the committee and the administration for your support while I was on my learning curve. Wendy, you're incredible. Every phone call that I made to you, we kind of laughed our way through it. We were serious when we had to be, and I could always lean on you for anything that I needed, and I want you to know how much I appreciate that. Jan, you've been a dream to work with. We have had a wonderful relationship, very easy to talk with one another. Paul, I couldn't ask for anything better on a business administrator. He's like, "Beth, don't say anything." And you as a committee, thank you for being patient with me. It has been a wonderful learning experience for me, one that I'm very willing to pass on to the next person. And the next person I would be more than happy to change seats with and move on to a more relaxed chair to sit in. Thank you, the audience and the public, for being patient with me. I'm not an expert on Robert's Rule or open meeting law. I've done my best. I've tried to live up to my end of it, and I thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Monica.
And I think as a committee, I think we should feel very good about what we've accomplished in the past year. I think we've done a lot to move the system forward. We've worked together. We've agreed to disagree sometimes, and that's okay. I think we've respected one another, and I think that's very important. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. Okay, we have a motion to close.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, and good luck to Ellington.
Oh, my goodness, yes.
Yes,
Ellington's
that's
next
right.
weekend. That's this
It's
coming
this weekend.
Right.
This weekend.
See you in New York.